right, everybody, I guess we're live, but for some reason my browser didn't play that clip. So
welcome to the interview room, everybody.
We're all here.
On our Sunday Night Live.
How's everybody doing?
Good. How you doing?
Great.
Good. Can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me tonight out there in the chat? I played our opening, but for some reason it didn't kick off. It must be
minor glitch.
Just a little glitch, technical glitch. Welcome to tonight's show. We're so grateful that each and every one of you are here. As you can tell, we've assembled one heck of a panel this evening to talk about, elder abuse / abductions as well, and then tie that into the Guthrie case and how that works with the various opinions here and the various amount of experience. I'm going to start with the youngster of the group in the upper right-hand corner, Dr. Gary Bricotto. If you don't know him, he is the author of The New Evil, as well as other books that he's writing. And Gary, tell the audience a little bit about yourself if they've never met you before.
Well, it's nice to be back with this group and to have Dan join us. A pleasure to meet you. Certainly, your reputation precedes you. I certainly know who you are. I'm a clinical forensic psychologist in New York, in private practice, a visiting scholar at Boston College, where I do research with Dr. Ann Burgess on serial killing, SA, and a variety of other things. I was previously the assistant director of the early psychosis clinic, COPE, at Columbia Medical Center, where I co-built the Columbia Mass Murder Database. That's the definitive study of mass murder that's ever been done worldwide, I'm proud to say. And I've written over 100 articles and book chapters on serious mental illness and psychotic disorders. And I'm honored to be here.
Awesome. And right next to him in the middle is Bob Gilliam, another great friend of mine, a former homicide guy, as well as an undersheriff. Bob, introduce yourself.
Well, Chris and Karen, thanks for having me back. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be with everyone, especially my fellow panelists here tonight. And Dan, welcome. Good to meet you.
Thank you very much. Good to meet you too.
Thanks. I spent 36 years as a police officer, many of those years as a detective. I supervised a couple of different detective units later on in my career, and retired at the rank of undersheriff.
Awesome. Great to have you here tonight. And then in the upper left-hand corner, another youngster here on the panel, Sergeant John Lamb, another homicide guy. John, tell everybody a little bit about you.
Good evening to everybody, and it's always a delight to be here, so thank you, Chris and Karen. You've got such great viewers, great questions. Very briefly, 3 decades in law enforcement, was a CSI, worked homicide, hostage negotiator, detective sergeant. And then when I left police work, I wrote murder mysteries, and I'm still writing right now. So that's briefly all about me. And I never say anything snarky or sarcastic.
Ever.
Yeah. Put your seatbelts on, grab your popcorn. John is hysterical. And he's also got a lot of books. He's written like 9 books, and his links are going to be down below. They're right out of the Joseph Wambaugh series. They're very, very funny, but they're different. And then, of course, to our, that would be our right, your left, Dan Stover from Chicago PD, homicide guy. Dan, share your channel, because he's got a new channel. If you have not subscribed to it, get over. It's awesome. Dan?
Yes, thank you very much, Chris and Karen, for having me on the show. It's an honor. My show on YouTube is at Big City Dan. I'm also on Instagram at Crime Big City, I'm soon to start my own podcast with some of the guys that I used to work with on the police department in homicide. I did altogether 33 years service in Chicago with 22 years I spent in the South Side doing homicides. As a patrolman, I worked various TAC teams, gang teams. I did work in the narcotics section, all of that before I was promoted in 2000 to the rank of detective, where I went to Area 2 on the South Side. I was immediately went to violent crimes, homicide detective. And I served there until my last 4 years of that. I did nothing but police involved shootings citywide. That was the whole city. We were on the clock all the time.
And Chicago doesn't have very many shootings, so we're honored. We're honored to have you here, man. It's going to be fun.
Chris, thank you.
Of course. And it's really great. It's great to hear, guys when they get out of the, off the job and they're pitching, here we are pitching our social media. Who would have thought when we started the job, we'd be going, yeah, hey, I have a YouTube channel, and it's the time has changed. And I'm so grateful that each of you are here bringing a wealth of experience to this conversation tonight, because Nancy Guthrie, in my opinion, deserves it. She needs it. And it's always good for other opinions to weigh in about what we're seeing as well as what other people are seeing. So welcome to the show. And if you're new here in the chat, thank you for being here. We only ask one thing, that you keep the chat classy. Don't attack the messengers, please. If you have an opinion, that's okay. All opinions are welcome. But at the same time, if you're sitting in your basement eating your bonbons and, you have nothing else to do but bother us, you're going to be zapped right away. Just go to another place, and because we won't notice you, number one, but we will later. After this is over, we'll delete the comments. So you're just wasting your time, basically, is what I'm saying.
And speaking of chat, I just want to give a quick shout out to our mods who keep our chat classy in a warm and welcoming place, regardless. But anyway, we want to thank Miss Sophia, Maui Girl, Mimi J2, Teresa M, and Laura Walty. These ladies, we can't do this without you. So thank you so much. We're grateful. And I do just want to give a quick shout out. If it's your first time here tonight, welcome. If you're one of our Patreon members, thank you for the support. And we want to thank our YouTube members and, of course, all our subscribers.
Yep. And with that, here's tonight's agenda. We're going to talk a couple of things about elder abductions. And we've got 5 cases that we just want to kind of run over. The first one is Heddy Braun out of Wisconsin in 2003. The second is Annie Hearin in 1988 out of Jackson, Mississippi. Nancy Woodrum in 2018, Paso Robles, California. Frank Janssen, who was a male, in 2014 in Wake Forest, North Carolina. And then the fifth one is Gail Cook in 1989 in Bloomington, Indiana. And the question's going to be, are there any similarities / information that we can learn from these 5 individuals that could correlate back to Nancy Guthrie? And the question why we would want to do that is because as we talk about Nancy's case, the suspect in that case, we can learn a lot from the 5 individuals that did these cases potentially. And if there's any similarity in relationship to Nancy's case. So the first one on the docket here tonight, real fast, is Heddy. And Karen, by the way, my wife, Karen, is an investigative journalist, and she's the one that has dug all of this information up. So you're on. Tell us a little bit about Heddy's case.
Okay. So Heddy Braun was an 88-year-old Wisconsin woman, and she was abducted back in 2003 in a kidnapping for ransom scheme. And she was literally taken from her home in the middle of the night in her pajamas. So I'm just going to give you kind of the high-level overview of this case. So what happened was the night that Heddy was taken, the assailant who came to her house, he cut her phone line, her telephone line. Then he came to her door, got inside, made contact with her. She was actually up, but wearing pajamas, and he managed to put a coat over her head, got her outside, and put her into the trunk of her vehicle. Then he drove around. So he obviously got the keys to her car, and he drove her around. She's in the trunk of her car. He moves her to another vehicle trunk, and then he drove to his house.
Okay.
There, this poor woman, this 88-year-old grandma and great-grandma, she was kept chained inside of a trailer that was on the property, and she was there for 5 days before she was rescued. So spoiler alert on that. So what happened? So Heddy managed to call her grandson the morning she was kidnapped. Now, I read several different articles and backstories, and I didn't see exactly how she was able to do this, where she got a cell phone, if it was the house phone at her assailant's house. We don't know, but she was able to call her grandson, and she mentioned that she was in a, quote, dark place and described a man shining a light. And then the call abruptly ended. Well, her grandson, of course, obviously panicked, knew something was terribly wrong, called police. They went to Heddy's house and they found that her car was missing. So they started a search. 2 days later, a ransom note was found in the grandson's mailbox. And the note demanded $3 million in a black sports bag, and then a cell phone number and an American flag be posted on the window of the family's business. Now, I should say that Heddy's daughter was fairly wealthy and was known in the community and had a very successful business that the adult grandson also worked at. So the family did as they were instructed, but they never received any call from the kidnapper. But the kidnapper was trying to extort money from from Heddy's daughter. So police were able to figure out it was a longtime family friend, a man by the name of, if I'm not saying this wrong, but Rainer Ravestein, 45 years old. He was a native of Amsterdam. And so police were onto him. They were able to follow his vehicle, and they eventually followed him to his home, arrested him, and that's where they found Heddy, who was alive. Now, remember, she was being held for 5 days, chained in this trailer on his property. So Heddy survived the ordeal, and the assailant was arrested, tried, and sentenced to life in prison.
Okay, so that particular caper almost has some elements pretty close to what we may be hearing here, but so I just kind of want to throw it up to the group. The first question I have on that particular one, do anybody here think that and believe still that Nancy Guthrie's case is an anomaly and just a rarity? Gary?
If it's okay, is it all right if I answer?
Yeah, go. Yeah.
Statistically speaking, I mean, I'm somebody that's a statistics junkie when it comes to crime, because it gives way to articles that I write, books, and also helps with profiling, helps me give opinions about how common something is. And I have to tell you that kidnapping for ransom is already very rare. It's about 60,000 cases a year. And out of about, like, just for example, in the past year, let's say from January 26th to the last January, this is the last time I have statistics, out of about 60,000 kidnappings that occurred in the United States, slightly more than 1% involved people that were older than 70 years old. So already you're talking about a tiny thing occurring within a tiny, already tiny thing. So it's quite rare. And if you're talking about the abduction involving some other element, for example, a sexual element or something like that, then you're getting even rarer. So from that perspective, one case of this is already very improbable. And, it's very similar to when someone goes missing, a child goes missing, and the public goes to, maybe they're being trafficked. Well, actually, the probability of that is extremely low, but the public worries about it and fantasizes about it and so forth, but it's very improbable. Most of these assaults like this, home invasions and so forth against people that are older than 70, are actually by people who know them, which is important to understand. And even where there's a sexual element, it usually is somebody who is very familiar to you. And that's interesting too. So, as soon as I heard about this case, my first thought was, that's odd. That almost never happens. So it's interesting that you found a couple of cases of it. You're going to see, though, that over decades, you can only find a handful.
Well, at the end here, we're going to actually correlate how they all fit together. So
there's probably commonalities. Yeah.
And anybody else have a comment or thoughts at all?
If I could just add on to that, from my experience, I can't recall one case over my whole career in Chicago involving a case anything close to this, as far as an elderly woman or an elderly man kidnapped for ransom. I can't recall one.
Okay.
And it's just like Dr. Gary says, it's extremely, extremely out there. It's just way out there.
Did you have an abduction for ransom with a non-elderly person?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. We've had many of those. We've had some really good case. Well, I don't want to say good. It was bad for the victim, but some very interesting where there was kidnappings for ransom. But nobody, not even over, that I can remember, over 40.
Dan, did you work a bunch of or many kidnappings involving drug deals that went bad?
Absolutely. And that was the majority of them.
Yeah.
For example, we had one guy that was, he was kidnapped because he basically burnt the big drug deal. He ripped them off about 40 grand. So they threw him in the trunk of a car and they were driving him around in the alley. He had a couple cell phones on him and he made a call to 911. This poor guy goes through about 5 dispatchers.
Oh, geez.
And finally, at the end, he says who did it before they coup de grace him in the back of the in the trunk. And but that's the typical kidnapping.
Right.
I mean, just like Nancy Guthrie's case, God bless her family, but it is just so out there. It's so outrageous. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for John and Chris, but I think they're going to agree with me that most of the kidnappings that we dealt with out in California were somehow drug related.
Yeah.
And I can only think of one home intrusion involving an elderly couple, and they went in because they had the wrong house. So we saw this. It was exceptionally rare, with the exception of course, cases involved with drugs. So Gary's on the mark. This is a very uncommon crime.
But
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had a lot of cases where it's an elderly person that is the victim, let's say, of a home invasion. That home invasion turns violent. I've had more than I'd like to know about that's happened. But to just snatch up somebody out of their bed, take them out, and hold them at that age,
Yeah.
nope, very odd.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go to the second one. You're going to find this one interesting. Happens in July of 1988. Her name is
but Chris,
Annie. Go ahead,
before-
Gary.
Before you go on, there's something that I want to clarify for the audience I think is very important. So we have to make a distinction between personal cause crimes and crimes that are group enterprise. Most of the time when these things do happen, they actually involve a group of people, organized crime, drug dealers, things like that. When there's an individual that takes a person, it's usually sexual. You're taking them out for that reason, and a lot of time you don't even take them out of the home; they're left in the home. Like we'll see, I'm sure, in a case that maybe
That's a really good distinction. Break that
very
down.
important.
Well, but
Right.
tie that up a little bit more for the audience about why that's so important. Because what Dan just mentioned about
Okay.
dope dealers throwing them in the trunk, blah blah
Right.
blah. Tie it up a little more for
Very,
the
very
audience.
important. So in other words, a personal cause crime, and everybody here will know this for the audience's sake, I'll say a personal cause crime means that I'm not part of an organization, like a group of people that are engaged in some kind of criminal enterprise, like terrorists or drug dealers or a gang or a conspiracy that for money or something like that. I'm just a person who has an emotional or fantasy based or practical reason to take someone on my own. It's my own thing, right? And when you go into a home and abduct someone, elderly or otherwise, and you're by yourself, the most typical reason to do that is going to be sexual. If a child goes missing and we find out they were taken by one person, chances are it was for SA reasons. And Chris, you know better than anybody, that was your area of focus. When a child is taken and we have that kind of evidence, immediately think that's a loner that did this. Very unusual for a couple to do that, for example. Although if it is more than one person, it's usually a husband and wife where the husband's a psychopath or a boyfriend is a psychopath and the partner goes along with it, which is very rare, but it happens.
Like in the Elizabeth Smart case identified.
Yeah, right, exactly. Where there's a passive figure and a dominant sort of psychopath or pervert that does that. Now, in a group enterprise situation, the idea is you take the person because they're simply worth something financially, or you're getting revenge for something that has been done to the group. You ratted on so-and-so, so now we're taking this person. And in those cases, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a very rapid request for ransom, usually within hours to days, right? Proof of life. We've got the person, it gets resolved. And if you're giving the person back, they're home in a week. Rarely you hold the person for a little while, but statistically speaking, if this was a true abduction where she was alive someplace, they would have gotten a ransom demand. The whole thing would have been wrapped up. She would have been brought home with a threat on her life. Don't tell anyone what happened here. We got the money. We're at a Dodge. So nothing here looks typical. But as we progress with these stories, I just wanted to put that out there so the audience is picking apart in their head. Personal cause or group enterprise? That kind of thing, because it'll help us understand. Chris, I hope that was okay to point that out.
No, it's great. It's great. John, you've been quiet up there for a second. Do you have any thoughts before we go to the next one?
No, I was just listening to Gary, and he's right on the mark as far as the difference in the two approaches.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this next one, Karen, tell us a little bit about Annie here.
So this one would be, for what we just learned from Dr. Gary, would be a personal cause one. So Annie Laurie Hearin, I believe, so how it's pronounced. She was a wealthy socialite from Jackson, Mississippi, 72 years old. She was kidnapped back on July 26, 1988. Her husband, Robert Hearin, was one of the richest people in Mississippi. Okay. So he owned and just 2 seconds on the backstory, which is going to fold into this main story. So Robert Hearin, her husband, he owned a company called School Pictures that sold franchises to photographers to create photos of school children. And in the early 1980s, his company, the School Pictures, they filed lawsuits against 12 franchise owners to collect money that was owed to them in many different states, not just one state. So on the day of her disappearance, Annie, 72 years old, had hosted her biweekly bridge club at her home. And they started playing cards at 10 o'clock in the morning. And her last girlfriend left at about 2:30 in the afternoon. Her housekeeper was there, but left at 3 p.m. So Annie was left alone in her home, we know, after 3 p.m. When her husband came home about 4:30, so we have that hour and a half difference there. He saw his wife's car parked in the driveway, but the house was empty. So he assumed she went out with friends. But by the evening, he grew very concerned, and nobody had heard from Annie. So he called police. Right after he called police, he had found a crumpled piece of paper on the floor by the front door of the home. And that was from the kidnapper claiming to have Annie, saying that your wife has been kidnapped. So that ransom note demanded payment to 12 people, all of whom Robert had sued through his business previously. So that's a huge connection. Witnesses saw a white van with Florida license plates in the Hearin's neighborhood in Mississippi on that day. So her husband called a press conference, which I think is interesting. Not sure how that works if you're doing it as the victim as opposed to police. But 8 days later, he received a letter in his wife Annie's handwriting. And in response to the demand, because the demand, don't forget, it said, I want payment to all 12 people who you previously sued. Robert sent out checks totaling $1 million to the 12 people on this list. Half of those checks were returned back to him from people who never cashed them. So an early suspect was identified, a man named Newton Al Wynn, W-Y-N-N, who had returned. He was one of the people who returned the checks. Well, it turns out this was a really strange story of how Wynn was responsible for mailing Annie's letter to her husband. Wynn was eventually convicted on conspiracy to kidnap, extortion, and perjury. But Annie's remains were never found. She was never found. And this Mr. Wynn got out of prison in 2006, and he ended up dying in 2012.
So this particular situation, I think it's important that the audience starts seeing whenever you start seeing even cases like this around the country, you start looking for themes. And are there correlations in relationship to the events as a whole? Right now, the two suspects in both of these cases so far are known to the victim. Somewhere in the circle, it keeps coming back to there's a correlation of the victim risk continuum where the victim was so low risk that there had to be some point where the victim and the suspect had crossed paths at some point, and it's not a random stranger / abduction, as if it was a prostitute working a truck stop at 3:30 in the morning. That would be a targeted stranger kind of problem because of the high risk to the victim. But in this case, it's a low risk to the victim, and it's a higher risk to the suspect to go into the circumstance. So thoughts on the Hearin case? Anything jump out when you guys were listening to it?
Just a question for Karen. Was Wynn charged with her murder? Maybe
No.
you said it and I missed it.
No, he was never charged with her murder. interestingly enough.
And no one was okay. You said no,
No
one
one.
was. Yeah, interesting. Wow.
Was there any indication, you say the letter arrived a week afterwards?
Yes.
But she could have written that the first hour she was abducted.
Exactly. We don't
So,
know. And remember, the ransom note was found as a crumpled up piece of paper left in the home where Annie was removed from.
So was it an afterthought? Was the purpose some form of revenge? And then you think, well, I might be able to make some money off of this? Because if it was going to be kidnapping for ransom, you wouldn't leave it crumpled up on the floor.
You would think.
Something went south there.
And it's still an unsolved because her body, the homicides is listed as an unsolved because her body has never been found. So,
any indication that Wynn had any mental issues prior to this, or anything that came up in that, Karen?
I don't know about mental issues, but he had a history of, I would say, fraud, financial fraud, those kind of crimes in his background.
So there, any other thoughts on this one?
I'd have to, as far as the note being crumbled up, you have to wonder if maybe she did or was able to put up some sort of a struggle, that this offender had that note with him, and during this struggle dropped it unknowingly. And then this could be another case of when, from that struggle getting her out, the poor lady has a heart attack and succumbs to the heart attack, and then time to get rid of her. That's what I'm leaning toward there.
Yeah, good
Gary?
thought. Interesting.
Gary, what are you thinking?
Well, so Newton Wynn is you mentioned Newton Wynn, right?
Yes.
The one who was arrested. So what's interesting about Wynn is that when they arrested Wynn, he was 65. In other words, the perpetrator is elderly. You have to understand that too. This is extremely important because of the mirroring that you tend to see between victimology and suspectology, like serial killers honing in on people of their own race or something. It can sort of give you a clue sometimes as to, why. So you want to bear that in mind, that was an older person on older person crime. That's an important piece of the story.
Okay. And again, this is why we're doing these, this kind of overview on just five cases. And we want the audience to understand, and there's Buddy back there. Everybody can see him, my Jack Russell. He's a nut job. But, that said, if you have any, thoughts that are coming up, this is why we've assembled the panel, because at the end of this, we're going to tie this back over to Nancy and the suspect potential, the psychological aspects of the suspect from Dr. Bricato's, opinion, as well as what the physical evidence right now from the panel's experience is telling each one of us individually. So let's go to the third one. Let's talk about, this one is Nancy Woodrum from 2018.
Yeah, I first heard about the Nancy Woodrum case really from Ashley Banfield, who started talking about it in connection, or not in connection, but in adjacent to the Nancy Guthrie case. So if you're not familiar with this one, Nancy Woodrum was 62 years old. So, I wouldn't consider her a senior citizen.
I hope not.
You hope not, but
Thank you.
anyway, Nancy Woodrum, she was a hair salon owner. She lived alone in, is it Paso Robles or Paseo Robles?
Paso Robles.
Paso Robles. Okay. And her husband had previously died, I want to say a year or two before this. Okay. So on May 5th, 2018, when Nancy didn't show up for a Bible study group, her daughter had a neighbor go check on her mom, on Nancy. They found the door wide open to her home. They found blood spattered in her room and the bed sheets missing. Police started looking for Nancy and they ended up finding her missing bedding and clothing discarded off the side of a highway a few miles away from her home, the crime scene. Police investigated. They looked into anyone who knew Nancy, anybody who did work at Nancy's house. And they had a lot of leads, but the leads started to run dry and the case stalled for more than 7 months. Then police ended up using geofencing, which is great to know, and that allowed them to identify the devices that had entered Nancy's house on the night of her disappearance. And from that, they were led to their prime suspect, a guy named Carlo Fuentes Flores, who was part of a painting crew that Nancy had hired to do renovations at her ranch. So police followed him. They ended up getting his DNA from a Coke bottle that he drank from at a restaurant, and it matched the DNA found inside Nancy's bedroom the night she went missing. So originally it was not in CODIS, so that, they had to do some more legwork, but they got him through geofencing. They got his DNA. The DNA matched the unknown male DNA that was found inside Nancy's bedroom. When police questioned him, he ended up taking them to where he dumped Nancy's body in a remote area about 60 miles away from her house. And since this was many months later, they ended up finding her skeletal remains. Just horrible. And the suspect admitted to essaying Nancy at her home. And then he suffocated her with a pillow to cover up the assault, and then took her out of the house and I believe put her into his vehicle. So he was just back in 2022, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
Okay, so this is a really interesting one. Gary, what are your thoughts? I see you light up quickly there.
Because the first thing I would have thought that there was that there was a sexual element because of the taking her, and also the asphyxiation element had me think that right away based on my knowledge of the statistics of the methods of such people. Did they ever check to see if they, I'm sure they checked if there was semen or any indication of sexual assault, SA?
Yes, she was. She was.
Yeah. Yes.
It's unfortunately a typical story. And the reason, of course, for the removal from the home, if the person is alive, is that an organized offender can take them somewhere and play out a very particular fantasy with them. Bundy, for example, removed people from homes for doing that. Sometimes I wonder if Koberger was intending to do that incidentally in that park before his plans got interrupted. But with where the person dies in the home, it's usually because what you've done has asserted so much force that the victim expires, particularly with an elderly victim, or you do it because the deed is over and there's a witness alive. Then removing them is a sort of unnecessary thing. So is the idea that she was removed alive from the home?
No, I believe that she
died in the home.
Yes, that he suffocated her in her bed.
Right, part of the
died in her home, and then he took her body out.
Yeah, they're awful, absolutely awful.
Yeah,
and
Dan, what's your thoughts on this? I thought there was some interesting correlations with the blood evidence, the door being left open. What are you thinking?
You asking me, Chris?
Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, my partner and I've handled several cases pretty similar to that, except for the part of taking them from the home. But definitely SA, which gets out of control, strangulations involved. Next thing you know, the victim checks out, oh, now what do I got to do with, what do I do with this body? We've seen them where they're, when you talked about the sheet rolled out, all the bedding was taken. I've seen them where they're rolled up in like a carpet, thrown out in the alley like garbage, waiting for the garbage to pick them up. I've seen them thrown into a garbage can and wait for the garbage guys to come and put them at the back of the truck. Up goes the garbage can, and out flops and all the same thing. Strangulation that occurs during the essay just gets out of control.
Okay, Bob, John, any comments, thoughts?
I would
No,
say,
very interesting.
yeah, the one thing again we're seeing is somebody connected with the residents. That this is someone who would be within the sphere of the victim's acquaintances. So we're now 3 for 3 in that regard. People that were aware of the victim and they weren't strangers. They didn't drop out of the sky and say, all right, I'm going to pick that house at random, targeted.
Bob?
Yeah, I just ironically, I just watched I don't know, a 48 Hours episode or one of those true crime things just a few weeks back on this case. And my understanding is the suspect was kind of braggadocious to the detective during the interrogation that he committed this crime and that he took care of her. I remember that comment when he put her in the back of his truck, drove her out to the burial site in the field, and carefully, as he put it, buried her. So he was braggadocious to the detective about that. I thought that was interesting.
Interesting. So now we're going to throw a curveball to the audience. This is a male. Frank Janssen, kidnapped in 2014, Wake Forest, North Carolina.
And Frank was 63 years old when this happened. And actually this would be, from what Gary just taught us, is a group enterprise case on this one.
Especially with a male.
Interesting. Okay. So Frank Janssen was 63 years old. He is the father of a Wake County, North Carolina prosecutor. This is the dad. So the dad was kidnapped from his home in 2014 by gang members. His daughter, Colleen, was a prosecutor who previously put away the lead gang member for life in prison. This is like textbook, Gary, from what you were explaining for
Like a revenge.
these group enterprises cases. So what happened? So on April 5th, 2014, this was a Saturday morning, Frank heard a knock at the door. He had just come home from a bike ride. He opened up his front door, and he was bum rushed by the assailants. They didn't say how many, definitely more than 2 were involved. They ended up zip tying him and carrying him out his own front door. When he tried to struggle away and escape, the suspects pistol whipped him with a pistol to his head. But his dumb attackers actually left a clue inside the home. One of them dropped a receipt for a McDonald's that was in South Carolina. And mind you, this is happening in Wake Forest, North Carolina.
You're getting taken down by another Happy Meal, like the guy in
Oh, good one, Chris.
Hamburglar.
the hamburger.
They all go to Mickey D's.
Well, thank goodness they do. For here we go. So FBI agents watched the surveillance video from that McDonald's in South Carolina, and boom, they see several of their who obviously were the suspects in that video. So they were able to ID the suspects as gang members. But in this case, they knew Frank was kidnapped, so the clock was ticking. And they had to figure out where they were holding Frank. So they ended up taking Frank to a rundown apartment outside of Atlanta. They did some terrible things to him, but he survived. 4 days later, the FBI tracked down the attackers at that gross, scuzzy Atlanta apartment, and they rescued Frank. He was alive. So the gang ringleader and 10 of his gang members were convicted and sentenced to prison terms ranging from 20 years to life in prison. And thank goodness Frank did survive the ordeal.
Wow, that's a good one, Gary.
And-
What say you on this one? And then Dan, I'm sure you've seen a couple of these in Chicago.
For sure.
Well, just to sort of say something about the previous one that I think is going to turn out to be very important in our discussion, because I can smell where you're going with this, Chris, I've learned to do, is that there are, in psychiatry and in psychology, there is a type of paraphilic disorder, meaning that you need for your fantasies and your arousal a very particular type of victim, right? There is a thing called a chronophilia. Chronophilias mean that the age of the victim is part of what you need for that arousal, okay? They're rare enough. Most people who have chronophilias are interested in children, which of course we call pedophilia, or they're interested in underage teenagers, which we call hebephilia, right? But the rarest one, I think, although there are really no good statistics on it, is called gerontophilia or gerontophilia, which is where you go only for people that are elderly. This is part of the arousal for you. When we see an essay on a person who is 60s, 70s, or older, generally speaking, where I have seen it in my data are random cases in the course of a serial offender who is not targeting the person because of age, but is simply so random, like, for example, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, or is on drugs and is just basically opportunistically breaking into homes and will attack anybody who happens to be there, right? So there are cases in the course, let's say we saw elderly victims in Israel Keys. We saw elderly victims in Ramirez. We saw elderly victims in a few other serial killer cases. There was an elderly victim of Santa Kimes and her son Kenny. So in other words, they're just sort of part of the story, as opposed to that is all I go for. I have in my data maybe 2 offenders that were exclusively interested. Also BTK. That's a good point. That were exclusively interested in the elderly. So what I'm trying to say is they are sexually attacked generally by people who are opportunistic or who know them. So the person, when we see an attack on them by people who know them, it is usually very ferocious. There's a personal cause element on top of the assault. So, like, for example, when Ed Kemper killed his mother, he didn't just assault her, he mutilated her and enjoyed it because he hated her so much. So we see that kind of emotional thing on top of the essay, right? I want to put that out there because as we're progressing with this, the question has arisen of whether that was part of the motive with Nancy Guthrie. If it was part of the motive, well, there's a very particular type of offender that would point us toward. And so I think it's important to say it. Now, regarding this one, I think the last case, as soon as you said that it was a male, immediately I said, this is not sexual. This is going to be some kind of group cause thing. And the primary reason for doing that is a revenge ritual, or you're going to ransom the person for money. So as soon as you said judge was the thought, I said, okay, who got convicted? Who's the revenge against? And of course, that's what it was. But I mean, I'm curious what everybody else thinks, but that was like textbook, that last one, in terms of why you take someone. The age was not relevant.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking, Karen, when you were talking about it, you said that they did some bad things to him, where they took him to this apartment or whatever. It doesn't say specifically what they did, does it?
It was in the nature of torture, but I would say not essay related.
Okay, so not essay related. Okay, yeah, I could definitely see. For sure, we've had stuff similar to this in Chicago, as far as the revenge part of it, for sure. We even had a judge that was ambushed and killed in Chicago. But, you know, it's because, like you said, Gary, who who was convicted here? Who's ticked off about, you know, what happened to them or a buddy or something, you know? So, yeah.
Bob, anything jump at you from your days in Denver up there?
Saw some abductions, especially in the inner city, gang related, but all drugs and gangs.
Okay.
I worked in an area in northeast Denver for many years that were the predominant gang were the Park Hill Bloods, and they were very, very notorious for taking out their rivals, but they were fairly ruthless, and they would not hesitate in abducting anyone that they thought would bring them some kind of drugs or money their way.
Okay, John, you're any back in your days out in the desert there, and anything jump out at you on this one?
In the desert, if I can tell you that there were rumors of abductions, I can tell you that our burglars never operated in places like Indian Wells or Rancho Mirage, because there was, as one burglar told me when I asked him, "Why are you out here stealing televisions when you could be, you know, in hitting the wealthy homes?" And he said, "Well, what's the worst thing that happens to me if you catch me, Mr. Lamb? I go to jail. If I get caught doing it in a place like that, you just won't ever see me again, because they'll just take me out into the desert and execute me." So who knows how many actual abductions went on. But when you mentioned leaving the receipt, I mean, I can think of at least 3 cases in Oceanside where the offenders left receipts, or in one instance, having committed a robbery murder, left his driver's license on the counter.
What a gift. Wow.
Yeah, he did well, and he it was a armed robbery of a sporting goods stop, and the suspect has sustained a gunshot wound to the leg, but left his driver's license there. And his initial defense when the cops arrested him was, "Well, I got shot while playing basketball." So, but
Don't
yeah,
you love
that's
America?
a fascinating story.
And you know, we're all and examples of this comment right below here, excluding my sweetheart here. 62 is the new 42. Just look at the tan on this guy right over here. You know, Dan looks awesome, and he's only 24. So all you youngsters, catch up to us. You know, you have to catch up to us. Okay, this next one here.
I hear you say that 65 is elderly, being
I
70.
didn't say that.
Hey, listen, you know, nowadays, because people are living so long, we don't think of it that way. If you got in a time machine and went back a couple of decades, they would have called it that way. Unfortunately, the language hasn't caught up. In the statistical world, when we're looking at crimes, when we're focusing on the elderly, we usually look at 70 or older. But even that feels silly in 2026. You know, it's that's just a leftover, I think, from when life expectancy was shorter. We thought of that as elderly, which is sort of funny.
Well, you know, don't speak for Bob like that. Let's you know, let's keep it under control, shall we? You know,
At 55 minutes and 9 seconds, they capped on you, Bob.
To quote Robert Duvall in Lonesome Dove, the older the violin, the sweeter the music. So.
There you go. I love that. And book.
Okay, the next one here is a really interesting caper. 1989, Bloomington, Indiana, Gail Cook.
Yeah, so this would fall under personal cause, a personal cause one of these, as opposed to group enterprise type. Or Gary, what's the official one? what are they called? Is this just a category of what's the right
Well,
terminology?
I mean, I don't know if we just say that they're separated into personal cause and group enterprise because of the crime classification manual,
Okay.
which Ann Burgess was one of the four authors of that, by the way, with John Douglas, Robert Ressler, and her husband Alan Burgess. And since then, that's how we've categorized things. I don't know if it preceded the book, but I know that's where I know them from.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this case, so Gail Cook was the victim on this one. And this goes back to March 1989. So Gail was 55 at the time. She and her husband were the owners of a very successful medical device manufacturing company in Indiana. And so again, she was definitely considered a wealthy woman. She returned to her Bloomington, Indiana home one day after grocery shopping, got back home in the afternoon. And and I should say that she and her husband, whose name was William Cook, they were considered actually one of the wealthiest couples in America back in 1989. So what happened in this case? So a man named Arthur Curry, who I believe he was in his 20s at the time, he came to Gail's home, rang the door. She answered it. He points a gun at her, and then he orders her out of the home and into a vehicle that he had brought to her home, which, by the way, he stole it from nearby Indiana University. So he gets her in the vehicle, and then he drove the car to a parking lot, and then he got Gail out. He pushed her inside a waiting white van, and ended up gagging her, blindfolded her with duct tape. Wow. And taped her to a chair in the back of this van. And then for the next 36 hours, he was driving her around Bloomington. Well, what else was he doing? So he called Gail's husband, William, to say there wasn't a ransom note, but to tell him that if he wanted his wife back, he needed to get the kidnapper $1.2 million in cash and $500,000 in gold. And then what happened was the kidnapper, this Arthur Curry, sent the husband to a series of several telephone booths. Remember the old phone booth? They were in existence back in 89. So he had him go to these different telephone booths with orders. So this is a pretty elaborate plan. And then he finally asked the husband to leave the ransom cash and the gold in a car parked at a rental car place. So FBI agents followed Arthur Cook, the perp, around to various payphones in the city and were able to trace one of the phone calls. The agents traced a call to a payphone that was close to where he was, where this white van with Gail inside was. And when the FBI reached the phone, they saw the kidnapper just hanging up the phone and then getting into the white van. When the van pulled away, they followed it into a Kmart parking lot. Don't know what Kmart is? Please go look it up. It's no longer with us. And then around to like the back of the store, back of the Kmart. Curry had seen the FBI agents following him, so he stopped the van, came out with his hands up, and gave up. So he was arrested. Gail was rescued from the back of the van. So she was held for, I think it's about 36 hours total. And Curry was sentenced to 30 years in prison for kidnapping. But he ended up serving only 11 years, and he was paroled in 2001. The good news is Gail was okay and survived the ordeal, and there was not, the kidnapper never got the money. No ransom was actually given.
So that was almost like a legit, kidnap for ransom. But it, the suspect was captured, and it seems like there was a lot of thought that went into that. Anybody have any comments on that one? What say you? That was number 5.
Do we know how he researched the home? Was there any indication he'd either conducted a reconnaissance or was in any way connected with them?
Yes, he was connected to the family through financial, in the family's financial world.
So yet again, this is not a complete stranger.
Exactly.
Exactly. And the
Exactly.
guy had a length.
Even though it's complicated. I'm sorry, huh?
Yeah, no, the guy had a lengthy fraud history in his background, and then went on to do even more fraudulent schemes over the last 25 years.
Well,
Yeah.
Shock.
One of the things to notice is the request for an extremely specific amount of money, 1.2 million. That's sometimes a giveaway of the person having knowledge about how much you have in your bank account or so forth. For example, it has always perplexed everybody that in the ransom note for John Benet Ramsey, an extremely specific amount was requested that coincided with a bonus check that the father was receiving. It suggests having way too much knowledge of what's in people's bank account. So again, it points to someone who knows you. I mean, didn't you guys think it was interesting that the amount was so specific? 1.2. Why not go for 2 or 3 or 5? I mean,
And my question is also, how are you going to carry $500,000 in gold?
right.
Yeah.
That's heavy. And how much? $1.2 million, even assuming that it was in large bills, that's a pretty heavy load.
Great
Yeah.
point.
Sure is.
Not really thought out.
No, and so how does that play out in your minds so far? I want to talk a little bit about motive. Right? I think, we can look at it in 4 buckets: financial ransom driven, revenge driven, SA driven, and opportunistic. It sounds like the Braun, Cook, and possibly the Guthrie case may have some financial drive here. And the reason I say that is the installment plan request when those first couple of notes come in. What strikes you about the first week of when they read, $4, $6, or $8 million by Monday? What say you guys? Dan, did you have any thoughts on that one? Remember when the perpetrator allegedly said, "Hey, give us $4 million, you get mom back," on a Wednesday? Well, if you can't hit it on Wednesday, then we'll hit me on Friday, $6 million. And if you can't get it over the weekend or by Friday, then I'll take $8 million on Monday. What's your gut?
I mean, for me, early on, I thought that all those ransom notes were bogus. I guess now they kind of believe maybe 1 or 2 of them were actually legit. But for me, I kind of thought along the lines of being bogus.
Okay. Bob, John, what's your feeling on that?
Yeah, I didn't buy into any of those notes, especially the first couple that were sent to TMZ, and it just didn't make any sense at all. And if we remember, it came 4 or 5 days after Nancy was abducted, so that just didn't ring true to me. And then the subsequent emails didn't ring true at all. I mean, they were just obviously people trying to lump on and grab some money.
John, you said like,
Yeah, I thought that I got to agree with Dan and Bob. I thought they were bogus. This is like, loan until payday ransom demand. It just doesn't make any sense. You either want the money and you're going to get the money, but you don't bargain over it. So and we don't even know who generated these, whether somebody did so just to have some malicious fun. But no, I thought the ransom demands were bogus.
okay. So that is number one, the revenge drive with Janssen and Hearin. They seem to more personal and proxy targeting, can include bizarre ransom notes or threats. Publicly may deter as much since the goal is just punishment in those two particular cases. So I think that's off the tracks here. The SA aspect of this, the Woodrum situation, inside access common, often ends in homicides, less likely to involve ransom notes, though. Would you guys all agree with that principle?
Yes.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
essay is the driver in that one. And then, of course, the last one, the opportunistic.
Wait. Chris, can I just add something to that?
Yeah,
I
please.
am aware of no case ever in the annals of crime, at least I am not aware, where a person committing SA against an elderly person faked a ransom situation. In other words, you've done it and now you're like, gee, let me send a ransom thing, or even did it as a second thought. I am aware of a case of that in a younger person, which was when Israel Keys took from a kiosk in Alaska for the purpose of SA, killed her, and then while he was at it, sent a ransom note to her father. The father paid the ransom while he was dismembering the victim and dropping her into the ice in a lake. But that was Israel Keys, that was sort of unique. But with an elderly victim, I know of no case. It would be, it's very important to understand how unprecedented it would be.
That was the coffee kiosk in Anchorage, right, Gary?
That's the one. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, this goes towards the key takeaways in these 5 cases with the rarity of what Dr. Mercado was talking about. So, Gary, I'm curious what your, obviously without having all the data, and we don't expect a diagnosis of this guy in any way, shape, or form, nor could you give one, because obviously for your, you're still in practice and you haven't sat down with the suspect. So
Of course.
just for the record, for the audience
No,
here,
the suspect. Right. We don't even have one.
yeah, the question I'm going to ask Dr. Mercado is his assessment of who he thinks. This is his opinion. It's not a diagnosis. I just want to make sure that's clear for the audience so that later on somebody can't say, "Oh, yeah, you said this, you said that." No, that's not what I'm going to ask. Just like the opinions of this panel here, I'm curious as to what type of personality, based on the key takeaways that we have on this. Those 5 cases obviously are this real fast. The rarity of strangers ransom for elders. True stranger kidnappings of elderly, especially 80 plus, are among the rarest abductions. Most involve known parties or escalate from other crimes like robbery and assaults. That's what those 5 cases have shown us tonight so far. And how does this apply to the Guthrie thing? The technology and the publicity, the impact of that, the doorbell cameras like in Guthrie and DNA gloves help more than in older cases. But heavily media coverage can flood tips with hoaxes and complicate genuine ransom requests, i.e., the letters to TMZ and all the things that we all agreed that that's just a lot of noise out there. And the reason for that is probably because of the publicity. And then the insider versus stranger. Many solved elderly cases involve people with prior access, workers, acquaintance, neighbors, family, friends, rather than pure strangers. Okay. And then that leads us to the very last conclusion here. Mixed motives, real cases often blend elements, i.e., financial desperation plus personal grudge or robbery that turns into extortion types of situations. Everybody tracking where that conclusion was on the 5 cases here?
Mm-hmm. No.
Anybody disagree with it?
No.
No.
Okay. So that said, okay, Dr. Gary, with what's going on now, with what we know, what do you think, or what's the type of personality
Right.
behind this situation professionally?
Well, when we're asking a question like this, I think this is where some of the statistics that we've been talking about become extremely important, because you have to think of yourself like a betting man, a betting person who's going on odds. Going on odds, this is not a situation that is likely to be sexual, although one never knows. And the suggestion would be some individual who had a mixture of motives, partially financial and partially personal. And statistically, I would also guess that there's more than one person involved. I have said all along that I feel that there's some mastermind behind it, and then some idiot or idiots that were basically either hired or were part of a conspiracy who are going to benefit financially. I think that's who we're seeing on the camera, for example. Now, there is no doubt in my mind, based on statistics, that one of the people in this story has had more than a passing interaction with the victim. That they are familiar with her home, they're familiar with her habits, apparently, and so forth. And it's not enough to say, oh, they saw her on a TV show and got some glimpses of her. No, there's an intimacy there that suggests to me someone in this story knew her, and consequently was probably not just motivated by money. So I think that what you've got is some sort of scheming character who can compartmentalize their personality, who might even look like a helper or a kind person or someone who was doing some service or was connected in some way, who this poor victim might have even thought of as a benign force, who actually had some reason to desire to eliminate her, even if it was as simple as, I hate you because you're in the way. And I think that that individual would have collaborated in some way with some other people where it was simply a matter of practicality, money, or something like that. And I think what you have is some nexus that we haven't yet discovered between someone that has some connection to her, and that could be anything from a person who installs something at the house, or is a cleaning person, or a mail person, or something like that, all the way up to someone who very intimately knows her, has been in some way, I suspect, in connection with a person or persons who are sort of the front of the situation. And therefore, what you have is some mixture of personal cause and group enterprise, which is consequently throwing everybody off. Because what you're seeing is a mixture of psychologies, a mixture of intelligence levels, a mixture of what looks like intimacy and comfort, and then looks sort of like making amateur hour mistakes and things like that. And you put it all together, and I think what everybody's getting confused about is this isn't just one person being profiled. It seems to be some group of people. So my strong sense is some person with character pathology who can compartmentalize and just thinks of people in a Machiavellian, objectified way, and basically said, look, I'm tired of you. You got to be out of the way, or I want your money, or something like that. And was clever enough to not do so solo. And that's my sense of things. And I'm curious if everybody agrees or disagrees, but that's how it looks. And I don't know who that person is that I think has some interaction with her, but I think we'd agree this is not someone in this story is not a total stranger to this woman. She might not have recognized who woke her up, but she might have recognized the person behind the curtain. So anybody disagree with any of this, or what do you think?
Gary, I have a question. Is it unusual to see a combination, as you said, of a personal cause and group enterprise? Because the last 5 cases we just went over, it was an either or. Is it highly unusual to see a crime where you've got elements of both?
Well, where you tend to see it is when a person hires a hitman or a group of people to do something. So someone goes, meets someone in an alley and says, how much money do you want to break so-and-so's legs? Okay, here you go. And then it looks like a stranger has attacked you when it's really a personal cause thing. So it would have to be a situation like that, where somebody was just paid to do it, or somebody was part of a cabal of people where they were familiar with the frustrations that this particular person had, or the motive of this person, and they said, what's in it for me? right? And another possibility is someone has a debt or something to a group of people, and you say, I can't pay it. And they say, all right, we'll help you out with this. What do we got to do to get this money? Okay, well, if you go and do this for me, some money will become available, and then I could pay you off. That I've seen that kind of thing too. But I really think that what's unusual about this is that we don't have the clear story of like a hiring situation. Well, if that were to come out, this wouldn't be that uncommon of a story. Dan, I'm sure you're aware of things like that. People paying off a hitman or somebody to break in and commit a crime. It happens, and where you want a good cover story for
Sure
a
it
perfect
does.
thing. So, I mean, Illinois, you must have lots of certainly in its history, there was a lot of mob examples of that.
For sure.
But anybody disagree with
Dan,
anything?
what do you think? What weigh in here on your thought process here?
My thought process is I maintain that I think that it's for financial gain.
Mhm.
How it is, I'm not real sure, but my gut is telling me it's involving money. I believe it's that person is somehow tied very closely to the family. That's
So we agree.
Yeah. yeah. That has been my gut from since I started following the Nancy Guthrie case.
And
Okay.
and I should be clear when I say we agree. I don't mean I suspect a member of the family. I simply mean someone close to her. Someone close to her in some way.
Pretty
Yeah.
close.
Yeah, I think clarity for this panel. John, what do you? Before I say what I'm thinking, John, what's your opinion?
Very often when I look at crimes, I fall back on the old Roman expression, cui bono, who benefits? Why was this done? And there must be a tangible reason. This was not some sort of nihilistic anarchy. There was a purpose behind this attack and this abduction, and which means that there must, by definition, be a connection to the victim. And I'm in agreement with Dan. Money or some sort of benefit is what is the underlying motivator on this. And I agree with Gary. I suspect we're looking at a minimum of 2 people, possibly 3.
Okay, Bob.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I definitely think that it's related in some way to Savannah's celebrity, and that it's at least 2 people, perhaps 3, and that they are close to the family in some way. Not necessarily Savannah, but close to the family in some way. The suspect on the video on the front porch is way too relaxed to be a random. I've totally discounted that from jump. And I do believe that that there could be some type of financial component as a collateral motive to this, but I don't think that is the overriding motive here. I think it's some retribution. There's some anger toward the Guthrie family in some way.
Okay. Do you think any of the family? Let's talk about the most recent interviews that Savannah has given. I thought it was really strange that we have not heard from her sister or her brother-in-law, the 2 main players in this particular situation, who last saw her alive and dropped her off alive. You would think at this point, if they're one cohesive unit, quote unquote, that they would have been sitting there, and in the last NBC interviews, you would have heard somebody turn to them and say, so what happened? What was going on? How was she acting the night she was at your house playing games and eating dinner. So my question is, did those interviews help or did they hurt? What's your opinion?
I wondered whether or not, and I wish Maureen was here to answer this or to at least give us some perspective on this, but I just wonder if the FBI, pardon me?
She's watching. She was tied up. She said, I would love to have been there, but she said she was tied up, but go ahead.
Well, I'd like to get her opinion on whether or not the FBI may have coached her on what to say in these interviews in any way. And that just occurred to me. I don't have a real strong feeling about it, but I was listening to it again this morning when I was having coffee, and I just wonder or not. I thought it was an odd interview in a few ways, but obviously there's a lot of emotion there from Savannah, and of course that's understandable. The interviewer Hoda was, I don't know, I'm not sure what to say about that other than it was uncomfortable to watch her interview Savannah, and so I at this point, I really don't know what to make of the interview. A lot of people are making some comments about Cameron, the brother, and I know we talked about this the other night a little bit. I didn't find it odd that Cameron came out and made the assessment that he did for a variety of reasons. And one of them I mentioned the other night, and that is perhaps that Savannah and her immediate family have had this abduction training that a lot of celebrities have, apparently. And perhaps even, and this I haven't heard this, but I've got to believe that NBC may put this type of training on or facilitate this type of training for their celebrities in this regard. So when Cameron supposedly said that, of course we don't, Savannah's just quoting him, but it didn't surprise me coming from a career military guy who is used to a fighter pilot who's used to making quick assessments of situations, and who is I would think would be very quick on his feet to come up with an answer or a solution to a problem or that kind of thing. So that didn't strike me the way it did some people, including you, Chris, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was weird that was the first inclination. I mean, it's just, it's like, and then to add on top of that, the blowback now on this last interview is Savannah is blaming herself for the totality of this incident based on that comment. And it was, so my first inclination was, well, who did he have a previous call with his sister, meaning Annie, who was on the scene, because had she called him as well after, first, and then called Savannah because there's a gap, there's a couple-hour gap there. Does she call her brother and say, Mom's the same way, Mom's missing, she's disappeared, and is this a kidnapping or whatever? And then he, like the telephone game, he passes that on to Savannah when Savannah says, what do you think happened? And do you think I'm at fault here? Or is it because of me? And he goes, yes, sweetie, I'm sorry it was you. But, and that's why I started questioning, what are the family dynamics here? And I want to ask you guys, and Jonna, before I go there though, I want to ask you, to kind of what your thoughts are based on what we're talking, and Dan, what your thoughts are based on what we're talking about right now on the dynamic side of this thing.
Well,
Did it
2
hurt?
points.
Did it help or hurt? Go ahead.
2 points. We're relying on perhaps the flawed, stressed memory of Savannah as she's recounting these events. And it may even be third-hand information. So we really don't know what was said to each other. And you touched on, very briefly, you touched on other family members declining to be interviewed. And I'm not surprised at that at all. There are people that may be, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, there may just be people who are extraordinarily uncomfortable with the idea of being videotaped or asked questions. And so I can't attach any particular significance to the fact that other members of the family haven't stepped forward to be interviewed.
Okay. Dan, what do you think of that? Do you think that's a plus or a minus right now?
The interview that Savannah gave, first of all, I think was a huge mistake. I think that there was just way too many small details that were given out, which is why I would kind of disagree with the fact of thinking that the FBI kind of scripted her on that. Unless some of that stuff was said falsely,
Coded.
which could be just like putting traps out, so to speak. But I just, by her sincerity, Savannah's sincerity, I don't think so. But I'm not sure. I didn't like some of the stuff that I heard from an investigative point of view, that here she's revealing little things. Just for an example, she knows that she was, no house shoes, no slippers, in pajamas.
Yeah, that was weird, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Doors open. I mean, she gave away case-specific information.
Yes, and that poses a problem down the road when you get a suspect in a room and you start interrogating them. He's got a head start, or she's got a head start. I believe it's a he, has a head start on the whole investigation right from Jump Street. And I didn't like it.
Karen, what are you thinking?
Couple things. First of all, I felt like NBC really took advantage of Savannah and her grief and just where she is, the place that she is right now. I mean, she obviously was, crying during most of this. You can't blame her. Your heart goes out to her for dealing with this. And it felt to me from a journalist point of view, like NBC, put her up to this. We don't know what the backstory is. They have her sit down with her, colleague and friend Hoda, who didn't ask any follow-up questions. So from a journalistic standpoint, that was ridiculous, a ridiculous type of interview. And I mean, your heart just kind of breaks for her. She doesn't, you can tell everything Savannah is struggling with. The details that she did release we haven't gotten anything officially from the Pima County Sheriff's Department. So of course, everyone's hanging on to what does Savannah know? I don't know. I mean, you guys would all know better if what she said put out there would actually hurt the investigation. It's hard to believe that would, because I think Sheriff Nanos caused enough problems and challenges with the investigation, just how he handled himself from the beginning. But, it felt like NBC did this for their own benefit, obviously.
Absolutely. And shame on them to do that to that poor lady and jeopardize the investigation at the same time.
Yeah. And, it feels like Savannah might not even be ready to come back to work. I mean, again, she's broken, she's grieving. You just really feel for her. And so I think it was rather disgusting what NBC did. And at the end of the day, there's, everybody has an opinion if it helped or hurt. She's going to come back a week from tomorrow. And yeah, people are going to be watching. People want to know, is she going to talk about the case at all? Is she not? You know, whatever. But I think overall, the details that she did release, it's interesting to hear all you guys say that you think it was detrimental to the investigation. And, you know, from the journalistic perspective, I would have liked just like a whole different person to be interviewing her. If you're going to take her through the timeline and tell us what happened from your perspective, Hoda dropped the ball because there's tons of things we don't know. Now, what did come out, which I thought was interesting, was Savannah said her sister called her around 2 p.m. I don't know if that's got to be Tucson time and not New York time for that probably to line up. And then Savannah was on a plane at 7:30 that night, flew to Phoenix, and then drove to Tucson, got in at 2 a.m.
Well, you know what?
Go ahead, Bob.
Sorry, Karen. So just going back to the way the interview was conducted. So I just wonder if, because Hoda didn't follow up on anything. There was no real specific information. I agree with Dan and probably the rest of the panel here that this was all about NBC, I think. And it was for ratings. And that's why they structured it the way they did. But that said, I just wonder if Savannah touched base with the agents or the detectives, the task force, and told them, hey, I'm going to do this whether I have your blessing or not. Or there are things I should say, not say. Should I put any codes in here or any scripted language that you want to try and draw somebody out? I don't know. So that's just what I was thinking about it this morning after I watched it a second time.
I don't know about that, Bob. Here's my gut. You know, Savannah works for NBC. She's their #1 Today Show host. You know, again, we don't know, but she could be at their mercy for what they want to do. They pull the strings if they hold, you know, if they hold all the cards, right? And don't forget, Savannah is a journalist and a lawyer. So it's really hard, and it's hard to know in this case how much, you know, like a perfect example, Hoda didn't ask when they brought up the video with her and her siblings talking, you know, to everybody and maybe her mom's abductor. There was no follow-up like, hey, you know, we heard, did the FBI help you script that? How did you guys do that? You know, walk me through that. Of course, you know, many details like that were left out completely. So I don't know. This felt like something Savannah had to do. NBC drove it for ratings. I totally agree with you on that. And, you know, I think there might be a cost somewhere down the road.
Yes, and so if I can jump on that somebody from law enforcement should have advised her, don't do this. It's too soon. It's too early for you to go on and do an in-depth interview regarding some of the fine details that you know. Somebody should have advised her on that. And if they didn't, then shame on them. But if they did and she continued on with it anyway, then shame on NBC, shame. I hate to say it, but
a red flag.
If somebody would have advised Savannah, I don't know anything about Savannah other than she's a reporter. Okay, she was a lawyer, but just because she's a lawyer doesn't mean that she knows from an investigator's point of view what should and shouldn't go out to the public. That's what I'm trying to say here. And she should have been advised. She shouldn't have done it at all, honestly.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, and I agree with Karen. I think NBC drove this.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, my question was, again, did Savannah touch base with the task force and say, hey, I've got to do this. NBC wants me to do it. I'm going to do it. Is there anything you want me to say or not say? And so it's just a question. I'm just wondering about it.
Which drove, you know, which I had a thought when she said, we couldn't believe that we're, reading these notes, putting these notes together. And that caused me to think, well, wait a minute. Did they partially write these notes and then run it by the FBI, and then the FBI, and the BAU, because in the beginning, remember, this was, a ransom note, right? And there was, some demands in terms of return conversation, trying to create that empathy, trying to proof of life, all of that. I mean, that's law enforcement language that's put in there. But the other stuff in some of these notes that I've gone back over the couple of days here, and it's like, did they write this? And then they've submitted it to LE, kind of like the point you just made, Bob and Dan. And, did they say, well, we're doing this whether you want it or not? And the fact that those notes were filmed at some place outside of, where they were, originally at. I mean, John, you as a hostage negotiations, supervisor, is that possible?
Oh, it certainly is possible. And the public statement that you're referring to, yeah, there were certain themes in there that you could see that it was, BAU was involved there. But I watched that, and it, to a certain extent, the feelings that they were expressing were genuine, it seemed, but the delivery was clumsy. It didn't look, it looked very controlled. And just starting back to her most recent interviews, I'm with Dan on this. When I find out from the relative of the victim important case-specific information, such as doors were propped open, that should never have gotten out. We pondered this on this program. What was the point of entry? What was the point of exit? I hardly expected that we would hear that level of information from Savannah. Which I would ask the next question is, why'd the cops reveal it to her?
Yeah, who told her? Or
the family was there. They would have seen it. So mea culpa on that, wouldn't have been the cops, but somebody should have told them, don't be talking about this.
Well, and I mean, every one of us, if we were the first copper on the scene and we saw those doors propped open, the blood on the porch, I mean, is the hair going up on the back of your neck? And
yeah, we wouldn't be assuming it's a walk away.
Yeah,
I don't know how you misinterpret
84, your mom, 84? Okay, yeah, stand by. Gary, what are you thinking up there? I see your wheels moving.
A little too well greased.
And by the way, you're with 3 trained homicide guys who are watching your every move.
Oh, that's fine with me.
Watching you, Gary.
I'm a busy boy. That's all I know. But that's what, if you conclude that, you're accurate. I just think it's important to understand that, that one of the things that was associated with the most affect, right, that the most emotion during that interview was when Savannah said something which actually confirmed something I had proposed she might be feeling very early in this situation, which was guilt about feeling that she might have had something to do with this, because it sounded like her brother suggested it also, or whatever. And I think that if you have a person who's thinking my fame had something to do with this, the idea would then be, I want to also use my fame to try to bring some closure to this. So the idea is that in order to sort of undo the guilt, person says, I want this to stay in the spotlight. I'm going to talk about it every chance I get. I'm going to do it on TV. Because the idea is that you want to then be part of the solution using the very same thing that you think caused the problem in your imagination. I'm not so sure it did, but she may feel that way. And I think there was a little of that going on in this. So I think we want to sort of see it from that perspective, is that she feels a kind of responsibility.
Did
it's also
you think it was
interesting
strange
that
though for the brother to put that much weight on her?
it's interesting. I don't know what that's about. I think you're suggesting that it may say something about family dynamics or something like that, but I don't know what it means. I think in a sensitive moment like that, it's an interesting thing to say. I don't know. It probably was said with the intention of let's get to the heart of what really happened here and diagnose it properly so we could put an end to this, and not go down rabbit holes. But I just want to put it out there that I think it had something to do with that. I also thought it was interesting because it suggested on a certain level, almost thinking like, look, I'm not trusting that this is getting solved, and I sort of want to use the public to help here. Like somebody please do something because I'm not feeling that we're getting any reaction, any response
So
elsewhere.
it was like a goad.
It feels sort of like somebody please do something because otherwise this is going to drift on and not be solved, and I'm scared that that's going to happen. So there's also that anxiety and that groping for anybody that could sort of do something. The other thing that I think is very important about this that I kept thinking when I was watching that interview is it became clear listening to Savannah that, see, because I'm a very big believer that you've really got to get into the heart of the family dynamics with a crime like this to understand victimology. You would do that with any victim, right? And one of the things that became clear from that interview is that one of the central themes in the dynamics of this family is loss. That they lost the patriarch of the family. Their mother was elevated to a kind of a take care of everyone and be the matriarch role, and that she stayed strong and so forth. But when no one was looking, she was weeping and having a hard time with it, whatever. It's interesting to think about that someone who knew the family would know that that was like an Achilles heel for the family, is loss of a person. That if you really wanted to hurt someone in that family, you'd take away all they had left. And it's interesting to think about. Just putting that out there, that I don't know if anybody else has thought about that, but that loss would be the greatest pain that family could experience ever again. You see what I'm saying? And she's
Yeah,
like,
you definitely have to consider it for sure.
you have to consider it. It's just a little interesting thing to think
Yep.
about. And it sounds like people in the audience are saying, "Oh, we thought of it." So I think that's intriguing. Wouldn't you say, Chris, when you're thinking about the victimology, that we have to take into consideration also that anyone who knew her would have known that despite being compromised, she was sort of like, like a Queen Victoria figure, like physically impaired, but running like sort of a tight ship.
Right. And so that's why I think the sibling dynamics are so critical in this particular case. And the only reason I say that, right, before we can understand the guy on the porch, we have to understand the folks in the house. And because that, right. And in order to understand, in order to understand the lion, you gotta understand, the zebra. Okay, why he's going to go after the zebra. And those dynamics I think are really interesting. And so I want to know from Karen what your take is with the sisters and your thought process of to dovetail on what Dr. Gary's talking about. This is 3 generations of women here. 4 generations. So from
3. You're right. Sorry.
3?
It's 3.
You mean I get to be right?
And when you're wrong, you're right.
Just a little bit, Chris.
1 hour, 44 minutes, 42 seconds. Chris is right.
I get to be right. You guys
you used up your one-time card, though. I hope it was worth it.
Okay,
Need to
but
bookmark this spot.
yeah. So, but from a woman's perspective, I mean, what's your weigh in on what you think some of the dynamics could be based on your life experience?
Well, of course, we don't know exactly what the family dynamics are. We can just kind of guess and make educated guesses here. It's obvious that obviously Nancy was not just the matriarch. I mean, she was the matriarch, but because Savannah's father died Savannah, I think, was 16. Nancy held the role of mother and father to the kids when they were older, clear. Annie's the older daughter, Savannah's the younger daughter, and, Savannah obviously was very focused on her career, very successful, extremely successful. She says it was where she is today is better than what she could have even dreamed of, she says. So, it's hard to know exactly how this family dynamic is played out, but some obvious things stand out. So a couple of the things that Savannah mentioned in the interview that I felt like, she said the three of us, her and her siblings, operate like a unit. She's extremely complimentary about her siblings, how brilliant and smart they are. It's interesting. I just kind of lost my train of thought here where I was going with all this, but Savannah is a lawyer, a journalist, and I'm going back to the interview. We were talking about this a minute ago. She knew she was sitting down with a friend of hers who was going to be kind of a lightweight. And I just wonder, is that kind of the compromise? Maybe Savannah knew that she wasn't even I shouldn't say mentally, I should say emotionally prepared to sit down and really talk about this case because it's still going on. It hasn't been much distance with her. And so, it's a lightweight interview with Hoda. So, maybe that's part of the compromise, knowing that her bosses at NBC may have required this, may have insisted on this. But I think that interview, it felt, Bob, to your earlier point, it was so uncomfortable to watch Hoda with the scrunchy faces and the fake tears, the fake, blotting of the tears. I mean, the whole thing, I told Chris, I'm like, this kind of feels a little bit like watching a soap opera, back in
the weird facial expressions. And it was just,
Yeah.
you could tell, I hate to say it, especially in this situation, but she was just playing for the camera. It was so feigned, in my opinion. It was kind of absurd.
Yeah,
so absurd.
And think about it. It was edited. They picked out her best reactions.
Yeah.
That was the best that they could come up with. And it did not impress me as being the acting was high school pageant quality.
I mean,
if that's putting it kindly.
I had to screenshot this. It was so cringe. And I was thinking, oh, this is gold. I mean, the fact that,
I think it just adds to the overall bizarre, unusual quality this whole case has had from the beginning. We shouldn't be too surprised of where we're at.
If you think about what Savannah is projecting, Savannah's projecting this, okay, and she gets this, okay, and it was like so obvious that, wait a minute, what's missing here? And then we think about how, okay, what else is missing? And then how in the world would we say to ourselves, what's the purpose of this messaging? And which for me caused me, the investigative hat, right, which we all are wearing in this situation, even, at home in our in our environments, our individual environments. I don't think it did her any favors or help her in this situation. That's just my opinion. I thought, it was weird. I think some of the details, like we mentioned, were leaked out there. Dan, I mean, just, I don't know what you guys think. Am I off base here, or what were you guys thinking?
I don't know what's going on.
Gary?
Well,
Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, Dan, we can hear you.
I don't know what the heck happened. I hit
All right.
some button wrong.
We can see you and hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see you and hear you. And
Oh,
so my,
It's Buddy.
my
Sorry.
Jack Russell can hear you too.
Buddy's right.
So,
um,
so not to
yeah, go ahead.
not to beat up on the Today Show, because that's not why we're here to
No, not at all.
That's not what we're here to discuss, but just to add some context to this. So listening to Megyn Kelly, who actually worked at the Today Show, I think for a little more than a year, she said that the culture there is, and I'm paraphrasing, but she said the culture is terrible. It is not this close-knit family that we see on air. It's actually a very backstabbing, and that's my words, not hers, but a backstabbing culture where nobody really gets along, and Hoda and Savannah apparently do not have this close relationship
Mhm.
like we were led to believe in this interview. So,
Well, that was evident by the grunting. Yeah.
Goodness.
I mean,
yeah.
it was annoying. It was like, oh my gosh, this poor girl that you're talking to is suffering, and there's no tears, there's none of that going on the other side of the house there. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to shift back to the dynamics.
But Chris, can I just say something very quickly about
Please,
that?
Gary.
So over the years, I've had quite a number of students that I observe meeting with patients. Okay.
Can you
And
hear me? Oh,
yeah. I've had quite a number of students who can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. That I've observed with patients. And what I have seen is that when patients are describing extremely emotional experiences like the death of a family member or the somebody's missing or whatever, trauma, someone who is not accustomed to dealing with somebody describing that much affect, particularly if they're being observed, right? Like me sitting there watching them, thinks that their job is to put on an extremely maternal or paternal, almost babying kind of tone and speak to the person like they're coddling them. It's very typical. So I'll watch the person and they'll say, that must have been very hard. That must have been because the first reaction that people have is to be therapeutic instead of asking questions. So they get very babying of the person. And then what happens is as time goes on, the person gets more of a skin, is they realize that in that moment the person is looking for structuring and stabilization. So you present empathically, but you keep it sort of, you don't get sucked into the affect. And I'm not saying that's what went on here, but I have seen it a lot. And what happens is 9 times out of 10, when the student doctor leaves the room, did you guys hear what I said? That
We all went down there for a second.
because I blipped out. So I said, did you hear
We
me
all
say
did.
that the student
Yeah,
leaves
we
the
all
room?
did.
Oh, you heard me that the student leaves the room and then the person says sometimes they feel
The
patronized.
internet's doing weird things, but go ahead.
We're not talking about aliens or anything, are we?
Oh no, but
Yeah,
but did you guys hear? Can you hear me now? I don't know what's
Yes,
going on.
I can hear you, Gary.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that in my experience, when the student doctor leaves the room, the patient will sometimes tell me that they feel patronized, that they feel that the person's being that they don't really feel the person's understanding. And it's happening because the person gets kind of sucked into the affect and just feels the need to be coddling. That's what I thought might have been going on here, that it was just it was impossible to relate to the amount of pain that she was describing, and the reaction was to be babying.
Okay, so I'm going to push back on that just a
Please do. It's just that's what I've seen a million times. That's
No, I understand. But this is a situation where you have the daughter of a missing 84-year-old woman who is speaking for the family And there was a whole bunch of pre-interview prep that took place before they got on that set. And somebody said, action. Okay. To me, it felt like a total, it almost felt like coming down the driveway. And I know people are going to hammer me, but you know what? I'm a straight shooter. I'm not going to lie, pretend, or anything like that. From my observation, when I saw them walking down the driveway, all the scrutiny that certain members of that family were under, and then they put a note where the first thing the journalists were going to do were run to that note when the family turns and runs back, and flies back to New York. And within 15 minutes, there were tweets all over the world about what's inside that note. Now, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, and I haven't fallen off a turnip truck either. However, okay, that was totally staged. 100%, in my opinion. The flowers, the walk, the note, holding each other. Okay. And now you take that to act 2, where you're sitting on the couch in New York City at NBC Studios, and you have this journalist, allegedly,
I don't think Hoda's a real journalist.
that's throwing these and all this, and I'm going, am I missing something here? And what was the takeaway of the whole interview? The takeaway was, my whole family is a solid unit. I'm not saying that Savannah in any way, shape, or form has anything to do with this. She's in New York City. She wasn't there. But I want to hear from Annie. I want to hear Annie say, when I got over to the house that morning and we saw the doors propped open, and I surmised that, when we saw the blood, you heard my sister tell you about the blood on the porch on Dateline. You heard my sister tell you about the pajamas, and you heard my brother tell my sister, sweetie, this could be because of you. Okay. And my husband and I, A, B, C, and D. Okay. I don't want to hear from the police and the investigators that they impounded their car, searched their house multiple times, came out of the house with bags, went back at 10 o'clock at night to take photographs and probably run an alternate light source and or luminol in the house. I want to hear from them as to why that occurred. And also the UFED, they downloaded their phones. And then I also want to hear from this knucklehead in California that texted him, did you get the Bitcoin? The brother-in-law. Just out of curiosity, this is the interview I would have loved to hear from NBC. Tommaso, did it surprise you you got a text message about Bitcoin request? I mean, am I off base here from your perspective, from an investigative, now would we not all ask these questions behind the scenes?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And maybe
For
not
sure.
courteously.
Yeah. And then you couple that with what we're seeing here, and it feels like there's almost nothing to see here. You can't criticize my siblings. And by the way, would you have eliminated anybody, like the sheriff said, this early in an investigation? Dan, you've done this
Nope.
in Chicago 20 something years. You've probably worked thousands of homicides. And I mean, would that have been the first thing you would have told your chief? Hey, let's tell the public we cut them loose.
No, it's possible, like off the record in the office, just amongst us doing a huddle. But to come out to the public and say that, and you don't even have anybody in custody yet, that just completely floored me. And I know a lot of people have hung their hat on that. Well, the sheriff has cleared them. Well, not sure exactly what all that means. I would have liked to have seen, like you were talking about those interviews, I would have liked to have seen that done in a better controlled environment, other than everybody together in the living room talking about what happened.
Mm-hmm. Separate them.
Honestly, that to me, I would have said we need you to come on down to the station.
And they need to be separated.
Right.
Yep. I guarantee they didn't do a separate interview with each of them. And again, you can't, and I'm not just going on the family,
Right.
but anybody, if you have any kind of an inkling that they may be involved, you've got to do a thorough interview in your house, my house. And it's got to be controlled. And that is the only way you're going to get people to move or to break. And that is if they have, if you really think that they have something to do with it, you can't do that interview at the local McDonald's, in their living room, in their car. You've got to go to your house and do it.
Yeah. And at some point you step away from the initial interviews and you circle up like you talked about in the background and you say, I don't know, this isn't lining up for me. Let's throw some polys. Let's see if they'll take a polygraph. Because we talked about this, a couple of times on the program here. You don't polygraph innocent people or people you don't suspect of not being 100% straight up. And you have the evidence that supports it that, well, yeah, the guy said A, B, C, and D. I said, okay, well, yeah, that's what the evidence is showing. So we may be good to go here. Now, at some point later on down the road, if there's something that changes, yeah, you may throw a poly on them, but it's just a tool, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
polygraph is strictly a tool. It's psychological. We know it has nothing. You can't use it in court. It's strictly a psychological tool, and a lot depends on who's administering the polygraph test. How good are they? And it also depends on where are you doing? I've seen people take the polygraph and completely blow it, and the polygraph examiner come out and tell us, I'm telling you right now, that's your killer, and we knew 1,000%. No, it wasn't. So you tell me how good a polygraph examination. Do we know for a fact that they were polygraphed?
Well, we don't even know. I don't even know who administered it. Was it the task force? Was it the FBI? Or was it, or did they have an attorney, a family attorney that put together a polygraph session and polygraphed them all? All we know is that the family has been polygraphed and they all passed. That's all we know. We don't know who did it.
Yeah, that's all critical, and that could be just used to throw smoke out there. Yeah, everybody passed, everybody's clear. I would want to have that done. And again, going back to, I don't put a lot of faith in the polygraph system. I just don't, because I've seen over my 22 years in work in violent crime homicides that I don't put a lot of faith into it. I really don't.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah,
Chris?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think,
go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
I think too many people put too much faith and emphasis on the polygraph. And frankly, it don't mean crap. It truly is a tool.
Yeah.
Psychological. Yeah.
LAPD did a caper years ago. The Supreme Court threw it out. You probably remember it, where they hooked the guy up. They put a spaghetti strainer on his head. It was great, creative police work, right? They didn't have a poly. So literally they ran and got a spaghetti strainer, put it on his head, took some wires, and they taped it to the back of a Xerox machine.
I can't talk about wires.
They taped it to the back. They taped these wires from the spaghetti strainer to the back of the Xerox machine. They said, and I'm just going to paraphrase how this thing goes down, but you can see where I'm going here. They said, "What's your name?" And the guy answered, right, and they both guys looked over at the machine. Nothing happened, right? And he goes, "Are you involved in this homicide?" "No, sir, I don't know anything about it." And the guy leans on the print button, right? And it prints out, he's lying.
Oh, that's classic.
So,
No, I never did hear about that.
yeah. It went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, "Hey, boys, love your creativity.
Yeah.
Coercion in nature." You know, they suppressed the whole statement, but the guy copped out. You know, and I thought, yeah, that's exactly, you know, that sums it up very clearly.
Yeah.
You know, could be a spaghetti strainer.
Yeah. And that's why you can't bring that up in a trial.
No.
It's inadmissible. So it really means nothing.
Well, it's important to remember, despite the way that it's been depicted in the public imagination, that a polygraph is really, in many ways, nothing more than a measure of your physiological reactions to stress.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an assumption being made that a liar is going to be stressed and the heart rate will increase and sweat and so forth. But what it fails to take into consideration is that a psychopath, by definition, doesn't have those physiological fear reactions. So that, for example, the person that we see in the video on the front steps who doesn't look anxious at all is not somebody we'd expect to see going off the charts on a polygraph, because the whole point is that the person remains calm under that duress.
Yeah.
That's what a psychopath is. And, that's the whole point. They don't have a normal fear reaction. So I think we want to take that into consideration. The other thing is, I couldn't help but wonder if the family wanted to take polygraphs partly as a way of getting the public to stop accusing them. You know, polygraph us so that we can go out and say, look, we've taken a lie detector test, leave us alone. You know what I'm saying? So those 2 points.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, Bob, what do you think? And John, I see you up there. What do you guys think about this part of our discussion here?
Well, of course, Dan's correct on the admissibility of the polygraph. I think it can be a tool for detectives. I used it once on a case, and that was it. Other than doing pre-employment background investigations, my agency did not use polygraphs, and so they have limited usefulness, in my opinion.
Yep.
Johnny?
The one time I saw a polygraph work, you may remember we had a armed robbery of the mobile station in the harbor. Would have been 1987. And it was during an armed robbery. And the case went cold. A year later, a recently discharged Marine went to go take a polygraph for an employment. He was attempting to become a security guard and showed deceptive. And when the polygrapher, who was a former FBI, asked him, well, what's the problem? This kid just spontaneously blurts out, well, I guess I should tell you about the guy I murdered at the gas station when I robbed it. And but that's the one time we saw it work. I wouldn't rely on it. And we know that people can beat the machine. If I knew I was going in for for, forced to take a poly, I could take a depressant, I could take pills, I could put
Yep.
a thumbtack in my shoe so that I could press it and create pain to mess the machine up. The machine can be beat.
For sure.
So, yeah.
It completely is just up here. That's what it comes down to. I have seen people move as far as their BS story, and they moved into the direction because they're thinking, oh, hey, look, kid, you just failed this polygraph. You need to tell us the truth. And then it moves them. I've seen that happen many times. But to say it's the polygraph, the actual test, is no.
Yeah, that's a solid point. So, Gary, does that weigh in on, now that you've heard, from an investigative point, what do you think the benefit was outside of just trying to move the public away from saying, oh, these, they're involved? And we're not saying the family's involved. We're just saying that when they do interviews like this and they don't benefit the family, and information that's being held back, it's a detrimental piece of the puzzle for the investigation. We're not saying that I'm not accusing the family in any way, but I'm just saying that's not a good look when that happens like that, because then that tells us they're doing it their own way, no matter what the cops say or no matter what the investigators say. And, to Dan, Bob, and John's point earlier, when you get this guy in the bucket and you're sitting in that controlled environment and you say, so tell me what happened. And he goes, well, I took her out of the house with pajamas and shoes on, no shoes. And then you say, well, where'd you hear that? Even before you drop it on him. And he goes, well, I saw it on TV. I saw it on
Yep.
Daylight.
Yep.
It's over at that point, because the next thing he can say is, I want my lawyer. And it's done at that. The critical, the most powerful evidence in any homicide case is to get the words right out of the suspect's mouth, for them to say, yes, I did this. And I'm going to show you and explain to you why and how. And then all of that information correlates with the evidence that you've collected during the investigative process. And it starts to line up. And even you get the bad guys to say, well, you got that wrong. Let me show you what I really did. Look at Dianne Feinstein back in the day when they were investigating
Ramirez.
The Night Stalker.
Mm-hmm.
She felt compelled to tell everyone about the shoe.
Yeah. And what did he do after he killed the guy in San Francisco?
After she came out and said that, he took the shoes with the distinctive rubber sole
And the gun.
and threw them over the bridge.
Over the Golden Gate Bridge, the .22 caliber gun and the shoes, the unique shoes,
right,
that in the early 80s that had come out. And he tossed
wearing them. I'm actually wearing those sneakers as we speak, the same brand.
Which, by the way, again, I think
they have a very specific sole. Yeah.
Which, by the way, I think solidifies, for all of us, why you never want politicians up at the podium during high-profile murders.
For sure.
Ever.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, Chris. Is that the issue is when a person is in an investigational role and a political role at the same time, there's a need to say things to the public prematurely. Now, the question I have for you in response to the question you're asking me is, because you guys are on the investigative side of things, is this: is there a world in which you would take somebody's vehicle and impound it and take it apart and hold it for a long time and do a polygraph and all that, if alongside saying that you've cleared them, you're not also considering the possibility that you might have that you never know, let's cross our T's and dot our I's, we have to make sure that's true. But we felt the need to tell the public they're cleared while we're also double checking that behind the scenes. I mean, is there any other way to explain why those things would be going on after saying that somebody is cleared? It doesn't make sense to me. It just feels like there was
Maybe
right?
if you were looking at the potential of if you actually have a suspect identified and you already know the course the defense is going to take, which is what we used to call the side-eye defense. Some other dude done it. What you would begin to do would be to firm up any areas that the defense could attack. So what you'd be doing is basically running down whatever might be exculpatory evidence or might be something the defense is going to point at. So in this instance, you could it might be reasonable based on the seizure of the vehicle and the other things for a defense attorney to say you've got the wrong guy. It's so and so. So you've got to have this all formatted in advance so you can say no, you're wrong. It is not so and so.
I see. So in other words, just to be clear, obviously, if people are cleared, we can't cast any aspersions. We have to say that. But the thing is, it is interesting that how come on the day you say, well, all right, these people are no longer even possibly on the table. Why wouldn't you then say, here's your car back. Here's your, there's no need for a polygraph. We've already, unless the polygraph occurred before the clearing, was that part of, when did it happen? I mean, was that part of the saying people are cleared? I just found that interesting from an investigational perspective. It felt like something that there was a kind of political reason to hurry up and say, but that they might be crossing their T's and dotting their I's privately, but we're trying to protect people from being tortured by the public simultaneously or something like that. Because I can't follow how that seems to have worked. I mean, Chris, what do you think about what
we
saying?
get a hint of that in Savannah's interview. We were on the phone with the sheriff telling him, maybe you don't understand. This is not a walkaway.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Everything in this case had all the narrative. Look at the investigative narratives. Where have they come from?
I think you're going to say that they're ultimately coming from the family.
They're not coming from the sheriff. The sheriff is just regurgitating what the family told them. Who was the last person to see her alive?
Tommaso.
And we haven't heard from him. We've heard from Annie tell us that he's a great dude. Or excuse me, we've heard from Savannah say, yeah, he's an awesome dude. Okay, great. Put him on the couch next to you. Don't put him in a car covering his eyes and somebody taking pictures and him and his. I mean, how many families have you seen in your time where the paparazzi's there and they're coming out and they're doing this, okay, because their mother's been abducted? I mean, again, it's like, okay, that DLR doesn't look right. There's something, there's something there. I don't know what there is. It's like, the question, what's your definition of, whatever, remember? And it's like something's not fitting correctly here. And then you get the other side of this, well, what happened? Well, we thought it was an emergency medical event that the paramedics propped the doors open. And we talked about this the other day, guys, remember? And Dan, you not on this panel, but the first thing the paramedics going to do to Mrs. Guthrie is say, do you have any family nearby? At 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. Now I'll give them some grace and say, yeah, okay, maybe they don't understand the procedures. Okay. But that story in of itself, when the first patrol guy's on the scene, And they walk in there and the family says, yeah, we thought it was emergency medical event. Maybe the paramedics were here that night. The first thing that guy's going to do is get on the radio and say, hey, did the paramedics respond here last night? Negative. Okay, 10-4, thanks. You know, that didn't happen. And that's why we're going to keep looking through this thing. And the first thing the paramedics would have done on that clipboard is hand them, do you want to go to the hospital? Because that's a waiver of liability if something happens on the way to the hospital. And none of that made any sense. And that dovetailed into this idea of my brother telling me this was a kidnap for ransom because he's an intelligence officer who flies jets. Meanwhile, I think every law enforcement officer in the country, when the thing first went down, is going, I've never seen anything like this. To the point where they call the sheriff out and the homicide guys, you know, but they already knew that this was a kidnap for ransom. And lo and behold, a couple of days later or a day later, whatever it was, you get this email ransom letter. And then you get this clown in Hawthorne, California, who interjects himself in the largest, kidnapping case since the Lindbergh baby. And he just decides to tell the public, or at least the FBI at that time, yeah, I just ran their name through open source intel and I got the 2 phone numbers of the sister and the brother, and I decided to ask them for the ransom. What? Why didn't you call Annie? Or call Savannah? Why didn't you call Cameron? Why did you just happen to call the last 2 people that saw her alive? What's up with that piece of the puzzle?
Yep, there's a lot of missing pieces of the puzzle that just aren't fitting together right, based on what we know right now. I'm really hoping that there's a lot more that they know that we don't know, as we should not know.
Yeah, good point.
But I tell you what, I've really got my doubts at this point. All along, I haven't wanted to slam Sheriff Nanos, but I tell you, there's just one thing after the other that has just blown my mind. So I have to really question his experience.
Great point. Okay, let me jump over here to some of the comments here. This here, does moral relativism and biology explain 1067s? I'm assuming that's 187 homicides. Gary, that's in your league.
I'm trying to determine what the person is asking.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think, I'm going to use my imagination here. It's like a Rorschach plate. But I think what they're one. Oh, can you guys hear me? It's like every time the wheels turn, the camera goes out.
Yeah, something's going on with the internet tonight. It started with the opening tonight. The opening didn't even play. But yeah, go ahead, Gary. Fill in.
I said, I think what the person is asking is, when a murder happens, or a homicide, let's say more widely, a homicide happens, is it determined by a person's moral makeup, or is it a biological thing? Is it, in other words, is it a decision, or is it and the answer is it depends. It's case by case. I'm aware of cases, for example, that are entirely motivated by psychosis, where a person clearly has a biological illness or drugs or alcohol. And I'm certainly aware of cases where a person is simply a scheming narcissist or psychopath or sadist or pervert, so a person with some kind of paraphilic perversion where they feel the need to kill people over and over again, usually for that reason. So I think there is no way to paint murder or homicide more widely with a broad brush. It's case by case, which is precisely at the heart of what my whole book is about, right? That there's a whole spectrum of reasons why people do things. So it's both. The answer is both, depending on the case.
Solid point. So
Yeah.
While we've got a moment here, I've got a bunch of questions we'll go through, but I want to give the panel an opportunity to tell Dan, tell everybody, we got almost 11,500 people here right now watching. Tell everybody about your YouTube channel that you just started up here a little bit ago. And get
Yes,
over there, everybody, and sub. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's I've only had it for a couple months. My YouTube, the handle is at Big City Dan. My Instagram is Crime Big City. And again, it's only been a couple months I've been at this, so I'm pretty new to it. But I am enjoying myself, and I definitely am finding it therapeutic to talk. And I appreciate anyone who'll come out and subscribe to me. I really would appreciate it.
And we're going to go over there and be guest for you. So you just shout. Any one of us will shoot over there and be one of your guests.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I am looking forward to starting a podcast similar to what you got going now, Chris. In which on the panel will be some of my friends who were also very experienced homicide detectives. One of them that rose through the ranks up to, he was my sergeant, my lieutenant, and then became my commander. And we became really good friends. He's super sharp. He's definitely going to be on board with it. And I can't wait to get it rolling.
And I'll come over and lower your property value, and to learn from all you old dogs in terms of experience. I look forward to really learning a lot I'm sure, from all of you. And John, tell everybody. And by the way, his channel is going to be in the description below. When we're done here, we're going to add everybody's channels and everybody's book. But John, tell everybody about your books and where they can get them.
For starters, thanks to everybody who's posted on here that they are enjoying the books. Thank you for buying them. If you go on to Amazon, you'll find a series of murder mysteries I wrote about 12, 13 years ago. But what I'm writing right now are my memoirs. The first in the series is Service with a Sneer. The second is Beach Blanket Bedlam. And I just finished writing Bring Out Your Dead. And I'm hoping soon I'll be able to show a sample of the book cover. And that will be out at some point in the next couple of months. And what they are is if you like my sort of sarcastic humor mixed with what it was really like to drive a cop car and work in one of California's most violent cities in the 1980s, you can pick up one of my books. And again, thank you for those who have purchased the books. And they're on Amazon, and I think there's a link down below.
Awesome. And I know Bob's going to be fishing coming up.
Yeah. Yep. No YouTube channels, no books, no skincare products, just a couple of fishing rods in the back of my truck. That's it.
And we all know where Dr. Gary, all the links are going to be there. The New Evil.
Great book.
Are you number 1 or number 2 on Amazon right now, Gary?
The last time I looked, it was number 2 in Forensic Psych. But
Very nice.
bounces the number 1 sometimes. I do want to take the opportunity to say that on Wednesday, I think at 8:30, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, John and I are going to be on the lab.
It is 8:30.
With Diane Fanning, who is a very famous Edgar-nominated true crime writer, to discuss the Tommy Lynn Sells case, because she famously did his biography and got him to confess to a murder and all that. So it'll be like a symposium of 3 true crime writers getting together. I think that'll be a great show, and it'll be great to see John in a room with Diane. Let me tell you, because the two of you are like hatched from the same egg. So it's going to be great to watch you guys together. But and then regarding the New Evil, you can get it on pretty much anywhere, Barnes and Noble or whatever. Amazon is the easiest. There is an audio book, but I recommend the print book because you lose all the illustrations. and graphs and things, which I think
And-
are important.
And yes, we are. Karen and I are going to CrimeCon. She had to step out to take care of Buddy. So we'll see you in Vegas, and we're going to try to do a meet and greet somewhere in one of the hallways where we'll just all hang out and just hang out, get to know one another, and that's what it's about for us. And then I'm also very honored that John and I will probably be working on something together about some of the things that have taken place, and that'll be a great thing because his humor, my stupidity should fit together very well. That said, let's get through some of the questions here. Dr. B, again, the porch guy described himself. Would this porch guy describe himself as a clown or a cold, scary guy?
Describe himself?
Yeah, how do you think he sees himself, I think?
I think, to be honest with you, I think he just sees himself as doing a job, like I always say, like a waiter, just doing his job. I think that, I mean, unless, it turns out that it's even simpler than we're suggesting, and the mastermind is the person that's on the camera. If it turns out that, I've been right about this idea of there being a chef and a waiter, that's how I think the person thought of it. And that's what I think you're seeing, is that careless indifference. Like, this is just a gig. This is not personal for me. That kind of thing. It's partly why I think that's different. The person is different than the person who wanted this. Didn't it look like that? Like the kind of disregard a person has when they're just doing a job at a counter or something. And, it's nothing personal. It's just a paycheck. So I don't think they see themselves as a clown. We do. We think the person's a clown. But I don't think he does. So, and I also think they watch these shows.
He's probably been watching from day one. Yeah, very carefully.
The mastermind, maybe.
Do you think Nancy recognized the offender and that could have caused the plan to go astray? That's always a possibility. And a lot of times perpetrators who get dressed up like that are afraid of just that one thought process. That was a lot of work to zip up and, backpack and all the other stuff. And if it's true that he potentially came back twice, based on some of the things that we're seeing out there, then it shows he was in for keeps. But I think that is also to his detriment, because I would say then he's local, because he has that much time to keep coming back. And I would say the South Tucson area, pay attention to people in that arena. And I think that's probably maybe where some of the things the coppers are looking for.
Do you guys believe that there was a casing process, that those images are from different dates and the whole thing? Or is that just part of the public narrative that
I think they don't have the metadata, but when you look at both of those photographs, and you can clearly see it was a full moon. And when he's walking, if you watch that video, that full moon is illuminating him from the back, and that's why you get the shadow.
And they keep referencing January 11th as part of the official investigation, which tells me that it must have some significance.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
Wasn't the 11th something to do with the one neighbor seeing somebody walking with their baseball hat down? Is that or am I mixing that up with something else?
That may be it, but the fact that if they've put it out tells me that either they're grasping at straws or they feel that there's some significance to it.
Yeah.
Great woman.
Can I add something to that? Please, people, when you see something that is out of place, call the police.
Yeah,
Too many times. I seen this guy walking, but well, did you call the police? No. Call the police.
Great point. This is a great question. Asking each on the panel, if you could ask Savannah one question, what would you ask, even if it's a follow-up? Bob, we'll start with you.
I would ask her if she paid any ransom, and if not, why not? Because she believes that that at least 2 of them were real, the ransom notes.
Okay. John, what would you ask?
It would be in connection with Bob. Why is it you believe that these ransom demands are genuine? Is this her personal opinion, or did this come from law enforcement sources?
Okay. Dan?
I would ask her, Savannah, when you did this latest interview, were you advised by law enforcement? Did anyone tell you what to say, or was it strictly from emotion and you just didn't realize that you were revealing some like super important details that shouldn't have went out there? And I get it. She's emotional, but man, big mistakes.
Gary?
I would want a fleshing out of who her mother was, more details, so we could start to understand why somebody might make her a victim. I think we have just a caricature of a person, and to do a proper victimology, you need to know why somebody might have enemies, or was there a change to their will? Was there some financial thing? Did they have an argument? What was in that journal that she used to write on? And by the way, Chris, one other thing I wanted to just make sure I had an opportunity to squeeze in that we haven't gotten a chance to say. And let me be crystal clear that I am not saying that I think this really means anything. It's just a little interesting thing that I dog-eared, is that January 11th and January 31st are both witch holidays. They're both holidays in people who practice witchcraft, which is a very interesting little thing to me. January 11th is the old New Year. It's the witch New Year, the pre-Gregorian New Year. And January 31st is Imbolc, which is the mid-mark between the vernal, the equinox and the solstice. And both of them have enormous significance to people who are Wiccans or witches. Not sure that means anything, but it's a fascinating little coincidence to me.
That is. Thank you for sharing that, Gary, because I just got a chill on my spine with that one, man.
Yeah.
But I know about odd things like that, and I will tell you that is a fascinating little thing to me. When I saw those 2 dates, I said, "That's weird. Those are witch holidays."
That is wow. Wow.
Yeah. They're both. I know a lot about world religions and things like that, and I was fascinated by that. That one is the New Year and one is the mid-mark between the, because it has that quality of needing something to happen at exactly a certain time or under a certain astrological sign, or they used to think that about zodiac. That zodiac was moving people to very specific coordinates, like telling Paul Stein, the cab driver, move 1 more block, because he needed them exactly at a certain.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, they used to think that at the time of it. Now, I'm not saying I think that has a meaning. I just think it's an interesting little coincidence.
I hear you.
Things to put out there, But did anybody else think about that?
No.
Yeah, it's interesting.
As they say, oh snap.
You never know. I've heard crazier things, but it's interesting to me.
Yeah. So my question would have been, or would be, prior to your mother's disappearance, when did you and your brother and sisters last communicate? And tell me about that.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
And, it's kind of an open-end concept that you never know where it's going to go. So that would have been my question. All right, let's see here.
I need to be clear. There are people in the audience saying that apparently Annie and Tommaso identify as Wiccan. That's the first I'm hearing. So I see no connection between those things. I'm just saying I think that's interesting, but I'm not making a linkage to any particular.
Well, again, this is why the dynamics of the family is critical, whatever that means. but everybody on this panel, if it's a family member reporting the disappearance and it's at the family member's house that they grew up in, and the family member lives less than a mile and a half away,
Right.
maybe 2 miles, and the family members were the last ones to see her breathing and the last ones to drop her off breathing, you're going to stay with the family until you are 1,000% clear that you understand why this guy's on the front porch and who is this guy, and is this person connected in any way, shape, or form with the family dynamics. And
It's interesting.
I think that's what's happening right now with the investigation. I mean, and there's a lot of weird stuff that's coming along with that. So let's look at this one here. Great episode tonight. Look forward to meeting you guys at CrimeCon. Thank you. We do too. I am very excited to be there. I bought and set up 2 security cameras, same as Nancy Grace. By hand, they pulled out. By board, the plastic broke. NGs were not broken. Okay. And I know that Josh at the lab did a show with Jason a couple of nights ago. He's an IT expert. You guys should go over there and watch that episode. It was pretty interesting. Other than family, who was the last person to see or speak to Nancy on what day and time? That's a great question. And I think we want to know that too. And I'm sure the investigators would want to know that. That's why they interviewed the Uber driver. Let's see here. And thank you guys so much for your kindness here. I got a lot of messages here. Nancy G took Uber to Annie's house. She goes from the garage or front door. Time footage. Savannah says trouble walking to the mailbox most of the time. That's a great point. She said that her mom could barely walk over 50 feet.
The mailbox, right? On a good day?
Yeah, to the mailbox. And if you think about the suspect that, if she had to navigate, the step down, the stairs, to a vehicle out front. I mean, there's a lot of red flags here with this suspect. Nancy's neighborhood was an easy mark. No one calls police when strangers lurk. They don't lock their doors. Spotty, inferior internet, dark, poor lighting, and desolate. Yeah. And that's why it's important to get a pattern of life for the 84-year-old woman. I mean, if you just look at her front door, that thing is, I mean, they have those things in the hood, those kind of doors.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
These
they do.
Yeah. I mean, these aren't the doors that you say, here, Grandma, I love your front door. No, you can't even see through those things. You got to get up real close to look through them.
Right.
And
yeah, you're only gonna breach it with a Chicago bar, as we call it. But that's a tough door.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure she left her doors open at night. I mean, she's got that front door every single time she comes home, reminds her that I better be secure here. And the fact that garage door closed in less than 2 minutes, 9:48 to 9:50, why would Grandma leave the back doors open? That made no sense to me.
With a door like they have on the front, but you leave the back open.
Yeah, propped open, according to Savannah, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not buying this. Yeah, the doors were wide open. I mean, I'm not saying they weren't wide open. I don't think that Nancy Guthrie, who could barely walk to the curb, says, you know what, tonight I think I'm just going to leave my doors open. It's 43 degrees outside.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm missing something.
Incidentally, I feel that I have to say this because of the comments, which unfortunately I spawned by pointing out those 2 dates. The Imbolc Eve is what I should have said, Imbolc Eve, and the New Year. Again, no, I do not think that whoever did this did it because they were sacrificing a victim in witchcraft. Yes, I understand there's a difference between black magic and Wiccans. No, I do not think that has anything. I just wanted to say that because I'm reading the chat and people have a way of oversimplifying and misinterpreting what people say. I'm just pointing out that the dates are interesting for whatever reason. Do with it what you will. Yes, I know how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I just wanted to point that out because, you know, you get people going to run with it and misread it. You get what I'm saying? Does anybody?
No, but
Yes.
it is super interesting, Gary.
It's weird. I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't
it's
know if I'm
super interesting.
Well, it's intriguing, but to think that the suggestion is that that's why she's missing is a little goofy. I mean, no, I'm not saying that. I think it was for money.
You know, I think the challenge every once in a while, Gary,
Yeah.
is people try to put you into the clinical box, and you have to do things certain ways. And
Yeah.
not with us. We think out of the box.
Well,
It's just like Dan said. It says, well, that's weird. I mean, like
It's
John
just
said a
interesting.
couple minutes ago, right?
Yeah.
Some other dude did it. Sod. We've all sat with people that are the incredible liars.
Oh yeah.
And then you get these anomalies like this, and you go, is it in play? Could it be?
It's
And
just
we're not saying, go ahead, Dan.
In our business, I mean, we're retired guys now, but in our business, you do have to consider everything.
Oh yeah,
You have to look at all the tips and the clues, and you've got to keep an open mind to everything, and that I find very interesting, Gary.
Well, it's one of those little tidbits that you just sort of dog ear. But see, people are saying they're really grateful that I clarified it because if you took it out of context, you would think that I, with all of my experience or whatever, thought that the public should be considering realistically the possibility that someone close to the family, was engaged in some sort of. Then again, I have heard crazier stories, so
Yeah.
I just thought it was an intriguing.
Well, how does this jump out at you, Gary?
Well, I recognize the images right away.
What's the
movie
image?
that it's from? Well, these images are from the Italian horror movie Suspiria that was directed by Dario Argento, and it's a movie about a school where people are practicing witchcraft, and there is a murderer. See, people in the audience knew what it was the minute it came on the screen. And there's a murderer running around killing people, and because there's this sort of secret cabal of people that are engaged in witchcraft.
If I told you that was a magazine on the sister's table in an article that was written about her, what would that do to your thought process?
Well, I mean, listen, I've seen the
Wait a
movie.
minute, which sister?
Weird stuff. I mean, just
Take
a
a guess.
famous horror movie.
Or if I showed you this one, okay.
It's a very good movie, by the way.
Well, this is what investigators do, right? This is our game. If I showed you this one, this is an art project.
It's interesting.
From the same sister.
It's interesting.
But only this one, she signs it. What is the motive of a secret? A secret doesn't move unless it's shared. Is that thought process to anyone? Have we heard from anyone whose artwork? And by the way, you can find this all online. Okay, you just need to search for it. Okay. I haven't heard any secrets yet, and I'm not saying anybody's involved. I'm just following the bouncing ball sometimes. I don't know. I hope it's wrong, but I'm sure they'll step forward and clarify both of those pictures.
Yeah.
I'm sure the investigation has done all of that and is doing it.
And incidentally, to clarify something else for the audience, The reason I made the point that Wiccans are different than, like black magic witches or whatever, is that Wiccans are essentially pagans who have ideas about nature and the moon and, the kind of people who would, go to the forest and celebrate a certain time of the year or that kind of thing. And they're generally not violent. People engaged in black magic can engage in violence if, for example, the notion of sacrifice or breaking into breaking into a church to steal the Eucharist to use in a black mass, that kind of thing. I've heard stories like that. So you can have breaking and entering. You can have stealing of people's objects to use in witchcraft that you need to steal from their home or take off their that kind of thing. So you can see some violence in black magic.
Yeah,
but not Wiccans. People
by the
in the
way,
audience wanted me to clarify.
the answer is yes. You can go on, just type in family names, and it will take you to their websites. And that's where I clip those images. So the answer is yes. I didn't. Now, if you're saying they're not, then show me why you're saying that and where you're getting that information, because I just went to Arizona State University and I went to the Poetry Center and I pulled this information up. It's not rocket science.
I mean, they're just kind of dark. There's like a darkness to was there also a darkness to the music?
I don't know that. I didn't want to push that far.
Yeah,
Okay.
people are
Right now,
into that.
because I don't want to get in the middle of something. I'll let the investigators do that. But at the same time, again, I want to hear from the whole dynamics here for me. Okay. I don't want to hear that mom, last time I saw her was 9:48 and the garage door came down and that was it. We showed up in the morning, which, by the way, we still don't know what time they showed up.
Right.
We have two separate times, 11 a.m. from the sheriff first time, and then it's 11:56, when they got there, and within 5 minutes there was a 911 call. But now we're hearing from Savannah there was a 2-hour gap before she called her sister. And so we don't know what those pieces are. And the other piece of that is, hey, by the way, we're going to impound your car.
Well, who knows?
I know I keep going back to this, but I'm also going back to my experience. I have never.
It's because it's bizarre.
Yeah.
Of why would you do all of that unless you had some reason to do it? It's just mind-boggling.
Right. Why have any? And Dan, you've worked thousands of cases. If you had a RP who is the sister of the victim, and you decided, you know what, I need to impound her car. Is that weird?
Yeah. Just a little bit.
I love it. Agreed. And Bob and John, I know you guys have opined on this from the very beginning as well. We're like, yeah, that's not lining up. Something's wrong here. And then hold it for 40 plus days.
Right.
Math ain't mathin'. But what do we know? Let's see here. Karen, please look up Carol missing, age 69, Ash Fork, Arizona. She looks like Nancy, recent heart surgery, walks with a cane 3 hours north of Tucson. That's a great insight. We'll do that.
What, Chris, give me the name. I want to write it down. Carolyn Lagaspi. Okay.
Is that Italian?
No.
Okay.
The Suspiria is. The Suspiria movie is. But
could it be the porch guy, simply the cleanup guy? He's not acting like he's going to a confrontation. I think he's there to remove NG plus evidence. That's an interesting thought. What do you guys think?
Worth considering.
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah, I definitely thought all along that there's a good chance there's at least one other person inside while that guy is at the front door.
I think so too. I think so too.
Interesting.
Chris, that case is being investigated by the Coconino County. Have you ever heard?
Yeah, that's up near Navajo,
How far is it from Nancy?
about 3 hours north up the mountain.
It's interesting. You never know. 69 years old, but that's pretty much all we know. Is that she just recently had heart surgery, walks with a cane, is missing.
Okay.
It's interesting. I think it's intriguing, and the person's full name, incidentally, is Carolyn Legaspi Cosper. It's like a hyphenated name. In case you do want to look, if anybody in the audience wants to look into it to see if they see any parallel.
If going out the front door was plan B, so to speak, do you think the porch guy could have grabbed the plants to cushion muffle the noise of smashing the Nest cam? I don't know.
I don't know how it would muffle the noise, but again, we know so little, we can't automatically eliminate it.
Range Rover bucket lawyered up. That's not suspicious to anyone. Why hasn't he publicly cleared? Why did they have his car the whole 10 days? Yeah, great point. I would still keep him on the table personally if it was my caper. The Range Rover guy that they impounded his car, I wouldn't take him off the table. Yeah, I mean, there could be a connection there, right?
There's always something you got to consider when you hear the words search warrant. There's probable cause needed to get a search warrant. So what was the probable cause that led to them being able to do what they did with that Range Rover? And I believe that's the same circumstances with Andy and Tommaso's vehicle. I've heard conflicting statements on whether or not they actually had a search warrant.
Yeah, and we've FOIA'd to try to get those docs, and of course they're all sealed, and then Pima County Sheriff's is not releasing them right now. Makes sense.
Yeah, and the only thing we'd be able to get anyway is the actual search warrant, not the complaint for search warrant. At least in Chicago, that's Illinois, it was a complaint for search warrant, but I guess it might go by a different name. Basically, it's the affidavit that you establish your probable cause in.
Yeah.
When you're typing your warrant, you've got the actual piece of paper that says search warrant, and it's got the basics on there, and then you go into the affidavit or the complaint for the search warrant, and that's where you put in not all, but enough probable cause, your investigation, to have a judge say, yep, okay, you're going to go ahead and sign off on this. I don't know if that happened at the A&T's home at all. I don't know. I've heard both sides.
Is it too late to collect exterior house evidence? Is it too late to collect interior evidence? John, what do you think?
You can collect it. I don't know what sort of value it would have at this late date. What are we talking, 58 days?
Yeah, a lot.
Well, and it's already been turned over to the family, so
yeah,
the house has, so
would have no value.
It would probably be suppressed too.
Yeah, because they didn't get it at the time.
Correct. Correct.
I'm concerned that things are coming out compromising the investigation, a successful prosecution later on. I can't disagree with you on that one.
Yeah, me either. I'm concerned, even if there's an arrest made, will it fly in court because of all the mistakes?
Yeah. Ashley B's latest LE source said the inside of the house looks like a crime didn't occur there, like NG just got up and vanished. Panel's thoughts. Well,
See, I'd like to know where's that source from, that, what this person just said. I don't know. I don't know how they would know that. I'd like to know.
This is an interesting comment here. Material facts given by Savannah on her mom, begging for mercy and having no shoes, come from the ransom letters she said she believed were true. Okay.
Great points.
But
Yeah.
but in fairness, I don't think those things prove much if you don't have a body with no shoes on or any proof that that actually happened. That's not so far-fetched to claim somebody did. It's not like when you send a ransom note and you say the person was wearing slacks with this pattern on them, you know, and you have a body where a person has so you know the person was in the room. This could have just been made up detail. Your mother begged. She had no shoes on. I mean, anybody could make that up, right? Don't you guys think? That just sounds like what you'd imagine somebody did.
Well, and here's another point.
We're speculating. We don't know that this is what Savannah speculated happened.
Right, exactly.
If an intruder came into the house, wouldn't you anticipate that your mother would beg for mercy? Now the information with the no shoes might have come from the fact that her shoes or her slippers were seen, and the presumption was she went barefoot.
Okay, and here's another investigative perspective. The moment you hear about that, there's a letter here that possibly could have come from the suspect and it's via email. You're taking that whole computer. You're taking the server. You're taking the copies of what were printed out. You're taking it all. Okay. You're not saying to the family, well, you go ahead and keep yourself a copy and you can talk about it anytime you like. And that's why I think it's really suspicious, because the fact that you would walk in and now they can take pictures. And the first thing I would ask the family is, did you take any screenshots of any of these notes? Yes, we did. Okay, we'd like to ask you to turn those over, please, for the integrity of the investigation.
Oof.
So that the defense can't come back and say, well, my guy didn't write those. You know, somebody else did, and here's the reason why. Because all of those IP addresses, even if they're encrypted, okay, you're gonna send that stuff off to Quantico or wherever your lab, whoever, and they're gonna try your guys, your IT guys that know what time it is. They're gonna dig into all that metadata and they're gonna reverse engineer where that stuff came from. And unfortunately, then you walk back in with a controlled computer, and that's where they're now sending the notes to a controlled situation. It's like a controlled phone call, right, to bad guys. You know, you're listening at the other end, and I don't want to give away too much stuff, but it's the 21st century. Everybody pretty much knows, you know.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the family's going to fire a phone call off, okay, they're using equipment from the law enforcement group. Okay. And, you know, all of those things. So the first thing when I first heard about, oh, they came in through, you know, into emails and computers and all this other stuff. Look how fast they nailed this guy in Hawthorne, California. That should have been a clue. FBI was on him. They knew exactly where that guy was.
Yeah.
And that's what crooks forget in the modern age. Just because you guys think you can encrypt stuff, guess what? So can we. And we're coming. Okay. And they nailed him right away. So I thought it was odd that she would have said, well, yeah, the two notes that we have. And again, that goes back to my thought earlier of, okay, well, where'd that all come from? Who came up with this?
Right.
This idea? Where did it come from? So
that was pretty fast. And Chris, can I ask you something quickly that I wanted to ask you? I thought it was going to come up. But,
3 hours.
well, I'm going to ask you. This is really quick then. You know, the Today Show, first of all, it's experiencing a surge in viewership with Savannah return and everything. But you get, like, as I understand this, the statistics which I was looking up, you're getting something like about 3 million views a week. So the question is, from legal perspective, do you think that interview could wind up making it very difficult when it comes, if they catch somebody to have a trial where the public hasn't been sort of washed out in terms of hearing that version of the story. In other words, can it have an effect on jury selection when you have that many
Maybe.
stories? I think it can.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really a question
I'll
for
let Dan and
but I
the
what do you
vice
guys
chancellor,
think? I was
I've been
really
doing too
curious.
much talking.
It's a huge audience.
Well, you know, those numbers aren't as high as our numbers tonight. We got over 11,000 people here tonight.
I hope you get 3 million in a week. But
Well,
but
we're
seriously,
hoping that you hit
what
the
do you guys
subscribe
think?
button. Subscription is not someone was receiving the camera notification. Who received the January 11th notification could have been prevented. Great point.
Yeah.
But Chris, did I miss the answer to the?
No,
Do you
Bob
think
said,
that it can
Bob said
affect
yeah, it could have.
Yeah, I think all of this. I think all of these videos that they've done, all the nonsense from Nanos, all of that could potentially come up at trial.
And
all
so
of it.
public. The fact that it's so public is going to really make jury selection extremely difficult, I think.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes. They are still working. And for all we know, they already have it. They're just trying to connect a couple more dots. We don't know.
By the way, sorry for my dog talking on the bunch of people. He's laying here at my feet talking to me.
This is another great point. I want to hear from Nancy's church friends. You know, they talk about everything. That's a great point too. And you want to also interview her hairdresser. How did she get to the hairdresser? Somebody take her? Did she drive an Uber? And this is why the pattern of life is so important.
For sure.
year-old woman. Did Nancy have life insurance? Great question. I don't know that answer. Anybody else know that answer?
No, but that falls into under the umbrella of my saying that if I could have one question from Savannah, it'd be to understand the dynamics with her mother, more the financial dynamics, the personality dynamics, because that's, of course, one of the first things that I think we'd all want to know because of the question that you asked, John, who benefits?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's ultimately the why. There was a reason this event occurred, and it didn't. It's not some sort of random, anarchy or something. Somebody set this in motion to do this, and the why is the important thing.
Well, doesn't it strike you all as odd that wasn't like the first thing to hit the papers? The details on what was going to happen with her estate and her money and all of that, because it's the first thing the public would ask. I mean, where is that information? I feel like if you're going to talk about the family and protect, that would be something you'd put out to help the narrative along. There's nobody benefiting.
Yeah, and to answer this question,
Interesting to me.
right? There is no benefit to what you just said. Exactly. And so to answer this question here, is it common for families to hide so much?
I don't know.
No,
No, this is such a rare case.
Dan, we said at the same time, no, this is weird.
Yeah, it's very weird.
It's weird. I mean, look at the dad whose kid was just shot in the back. The guy's already in front of Congress complaining about, things. You're not seeing anybody running to the plate and saying, I want to tell you something. Okay. If the cops can't get you, I'm going to get you. I'm going to find you. I'm going to hunt you down. Okay. And those are the kind of families you pull in and you say, hey, I need your help. What's that? I know your passion. And what you do is you put them together, meaning you assign somebody on your team to manage the family. Here's what I need, Frank. What is that, sir? I need you to manage Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, such and such. Keep them appraised. Don't tell them all what's going down, but give them enough so that they don't go feed the beast, i.e. the media. Okay. And you work with them. You work with them. You work together. Okay. But you don't see them driving out of the driveway, and people photograph of me and stuff. This family unit needs to be just that, a family unit. There's no letter I in the word team. And when you have one person talking for the family, that's more of a I situation than a team situation, even though you're projecting we're a solid unit. That dynamic is off here for me. And that's why I can't let go of that piece of it until we get additional information. I'm not going to leave that house yet. There's something more in that house or about that neighborhood and about that night that we don't know. And I'm praying that the authorities, like Dan and like Bob, John, all of us have said here, they may have 3 aces and they're looking for that 4th one, and then they're going to drop the bomb.
I hope
And-
so.
Sure hope so.
Yeah, and I'm hoping maybe it's Koberger.
Oh,
Yeah.
As we
You know-
wrap up, if we have, let me know when to wrap up. People are asking to see Andy, and I'll shift the camera. But when we're done,
Okay. Why was the woman living so vulnerable? Great question. That's a family dynamic again. How did Mr. California even knew who Annie? That he said that he had just did an open source search and found those 2 phone numbers and decided to text them and shoot a 9-second phone call in as well.
to whoever got the phone call.
Yeah, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, as Bob has mentioned, they shipped him from L.A. to Tucson just because, that was a good idea.
Well, it's where the case is. I mean, that's where the prosecution is. So it's got to be in the District of Arizona. So that's why they shipped him back to Tucson.
Yep. And even though it occurred in California.
Well, but they're prosecuting, but half of it occurred in California, half of it occurred here in relation to the crime. So they've made a decision to do it in Arizona, and that gives them access, that gives the investigators access to them anyway. So that's probably another reason why.
Which is another interesting dynamic, because that's probably some of the behind the scenes action going on with the feds, because that's an FBI case. And we all know that the sheriff doesn't like them. So I wonder, I want to be a fly on the wall in those conversations.
See, and that's some BS. It's like get rid of the ego. There's no room for that in this thing. Get rid of the ego, your dislike for them. You got to work together as one unit to bring this to justice. I don't get that. Oh, I don't like them. Well, too bad.
That's why Dan is here. I love him. That's awesome. Those
sounded like it is, Chris.
thought, and I won't hide my face. Can the panel read between the lines? I think she's cognitive dissonance. I think she knows, but she doesn't want to wrap her mind around it. And you can't blame her for that. She's 3,000 miles away and she gets a phone call, mom's missing. Now, what that means is, I'm not saying it's anybody in the family. I'm not saying that again. I'm just saying there's something there that something inside of her. And we've interviewed witnesses or family members where you just say, look, I'm telling you, can you imagine the interview? Savannah? Yeah. Okay. I have to impound your sister's car. What? Why?
Okay.
That will cause that kind of cognitive dissonance.
Denial.
All of that. I have to search your sister's house. What are you talking about? That's
just like people that won't accept that a family member committed suicide. See that over and over. There's no way that. Yeah, there is. I'm sorry to tell you, but yeah, they did commit suicide. Oh, there's no way. I'm telling you, there is. Same thing.
Yep.
Well,
And go ahead, Gary.
No, I was just going to say that the person whose comment was on the screen just before, Elizabeth McMaster, who's identified in the chat as an attorney.
Yes.
I think that may be the attorney who focuses on elder abuse and so forth, who has done podcasts and stuff on the abduction of an elderly woman. I'm curious if that's the same person. Because if it is, that person would have a lot to say about this particular case that would be of interest, as an authority on cases that involve abuse and abduction of elderly people. So if so, I'd love it if the person would tell me, because that's
Well, I don't know. I mean, and
they'll let us.
I'd love to hear from her. And
Yeah.
you know, I've actually got a friend of mine in San Diego. His name is
Sure.
Paul Greenwood.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Paul Greenwood? You can look him up. And in the United States, I'm sure she knows Paul Greenwood. In the United States, it was the first ever elder abuse unit put together in the early 90s at the San Diego District Attorney's Office. And Paul travels internationally and trains on elder abuse. He's handled tens of thousands of cases. And I invited him on as a guest.
Oh.
So I don't know when that would happen, but we just haven't pulled the trigger on that. He's from the UK, by the way. John, you know Paul.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
Long
anyway,
time with the DA.
this was before elder abuse was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't exist really.
Yeah, it would go to your family domestic violence units, the DV problems, then they would handle it. But now it's a whole thing. But absolutely, let's keep moving here. Sorry, 18 more questions. Suggestions how we keep seniors safe while keeping the independence. You know what I'll do? We'll do a whole show on that. Okay, thank you. Porch guy appeared looking left from the cam, right? We saw that. Great point, Mark. Question, I keep hearing, why hasn't Savannah paid for people to search? I don't think she needs to pay for people to search. There are groups that stepped up to do that for her.
Yep.
Call police if you see something suspicious. Be a Mrs. Kavitz. It could well save a life. Yes, exactly. Bewitched. The 11th proves to perp absolutely no one sees to worry. How do you know? Great question. The Holy Spirit is the one you want. I can't disagree with that. Several band members are Wiccan per monk's intrigue, whatever that means. I know Wiccan people who are very spiritual. Yep. Thank you for your show, GB, the lab, and your viewers. What?
That's Jason Guthrie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Jason. He's starting a
it.
channel.
It's got a show now, it looks like.
The Digital Chase. I have decided to
for
start a channel to break down cases from a digital perspective.
Good for
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, Jason. Great job. We'll be circling back. What can Dr. Gary tell us about dark Wicca?
I can answer that if you want me to, but if you think it's beyond the scope of the conversation.
Give me the Reader's Digest version.
I mean, I know about all this weird stuff because of the work I do and the fact that I study evil and write about it. Dark Wicca is about the embracing of the balancing of the shadow part of the self, the darker selfish parts of the self, and people who are into that branch of Wicca can engage in things like curses and things like that. But it's this idea that it's a normal thing to have that dark part and to kind of embrace it and balance it out with the light part. It's a complicated idea, and that's the Reader's Digest version. But again, Wiccans don't generally identify as being violent. It's more black magic that's associated with voodoo or things like that are associated with that.
Okay. There you go.
It's weird stuff, to the average person, but
What if Nancy didn't enter the door but the perp? Appreciate your fine gentleman. And to answer that other one, yes, the letters went to the family. Appreciate you, fine gentlemen. Always hearing your insight expertise. Hopefully you have a happy Easter. Thank you so much. Back at you. So then backpack could have been filled with deep cleanup supplies. That's a possibility. I don't know what was in the backpack. I mean, I've heard that suspect went in there and rolled her up and carried her out over his shoulder. And, you know, well, I won't know that until they sit down with him and then they come out and say, yeah, this is what he said. And we heard that in court. Would interview with family unit help quash rumors of involvement? Yeah, individual interviews, like Dan said, separate rooms, maybe at the same time, 2, 3, 4 different rooms, but separate detectives. And if it's a critical interview, then the primary case agent runs those.
Exactly. Yep.
Did NG have a male companion? Then the relationship ended. The person hired these thugs for revenge. That's a great possible. Let's see, the digital chase, i.e. Jason, January 11th, about data within the servers regarding the notes. Ellie worked on them. They are traceable, but very complex and will take time. I can explain further. Okay, we'll get to that here. Question 2. Do you all think the feds, Ellie, know who they're releasing what they're releasing the more they release to the public? If so, what type of info they are not releasing? Well, you know, the interesting part here is you're not hearing from the FBI on purpose. We're hearing from the sheriff's department and somebody within the sheriff's department that is leaking information, and that is never a good thing in homicide investigations. The next piece of this puzzle, in my opinion, is the family dynamics here. The sibling dynamics, now that Savannah has opened that window. I think it's caused more questions. It created more questions than it answered.
I think it would have been meaningful if they were all together on the interview.
Say it again, Gary?
Well, I thought if the whole family got together and talked on the Today Show, it would have had a very different effect. But there was something about being isolated and speaking for everyone that made me, I couldn't understand what it meant. Like it felt like, are you the spokesperson? Are you the sort of identified are you the one who's most comfortable and everyone else is not? Are you the leader figure naturally? I didn't know what it signified, but with those kinds of things, you usually have everybody unified talking.
Yeah, I mean, think of it like a sports game. Let's say the Bears in Chi-Town.
The Bears.
Oh, to hear you say it, Dan, that's their authentic.
Dan's the original. So if you only have the quarterback telling you about the game, and you don't have the MVP of the game sitting next to you with the media, and just the quarterback telling you, yeah, I threw the football. And if you don't have the guy who caught the football say, yeah, it was a perfect pass and I was able to make the touchdown, okay, then what you're doing is you're projecting a singularity to an entire conversation that everybody's going, well, we're watching the game and we're only getting pieces. Okay. And that's what's happening here. You have all of these pieces coming from the sheriff who says the family did A, B, C, and D, but you only have the quarterback outside saying, yeah, I threw the football. Everybody's waiting for, well, who caught it? And did you make a touchdown? And I think that's where this is going right now. And unfortunately, it was turned into a TV show. And so the public's going to demand answers. That's what happens. That's what happens. Dr. Gary just mentioned, I know he reads everybody's minds. Okay. He does. He's amazing.
You want to get off, Chris, because we've been off for 3.5 hours. Am I reading your mind correctly?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I want to be sensitive to everybody's time, and it's, we're all long form here, but I promised Karen I would never do a 4-hour program again. But because I don't know, for just common sense. But all right, last final thoughts go around. Dan, tell everybody about your new channel, and everybody, if you have not subscribe to Dan's channel yet, please get over there. It will be at the bottom of the links here today. He's an amazing human being, as you can tell. I can't wait to learn a ton more from that guy. So Dan, tell everybody about what's going on there. And before, by the way, there's a new thing with StreamYard. You have to stay on for a couple minutes behind the scenes until it says it's uploaded on your side. If you could do that for me, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, first, I want to say again, thank you, Chris, Karen, and I really appreciate this opportunity. And it was awesome to work with you guys. I really like you. I think we have a really good chemistry, and I know Maureen's awesome as well. I look forward to being back on with you if you'll have me. And my YouTube channel is at Big City Dan. My Instagram is Crime Big City, and I'm working on a future podcast I hope to have up within about a month or so, I'm hoping.
Awesome. Well, it's our honor to have you here again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Gary, tell everybody a little bit about where they can get your stuff and what you got on the horizon.
Well, of the books I've written, the one most people are interested in is the New Evil, which you can get, as I said, anywhere. I mean, you could most people buy it at Amazon or get it at Barnes and Noble. It's pretty popular. I'm pleased to say. I'm simultaneously working on a book with the members of the Cold Case Foundation, which I swear is getting wrapped up sooner than later, and also a kind of follow-up book, The New Evil. And I've also spoken to John about an idea for another one, and another member of the foundation about a possible fourth book. So I definitely got a lot going on. I just want to say how much I appreciate working with this group. It keeps growing. And I'm getting to make new friends and meet new experts, and I love it. This group is definitely salt of the earth kind of people. So it's a joy to work with you all and talk to you behind the scenes and watch this whole thing develop. It's like a master class in the way a bunch of people with a lot of experience sort of develop their thinking about a case over time. I swear, like, you could take all these episodes, Chris, and lay them out and learn from them the way that we're sort of picking at this and changing our thinking, and especially what we say behind the scenes. People would kill to be a fly on the wall, I think, to learn from that, because I learned from you guys. I've been doing this stuff for a long time. So I really, really appreciate that. And I'll just say in as a final point, happy Palm Sunday to my fellow Roman Catholics, and a happy Easter, happy Passover to anyone who celebrates that beautiful holiday. And let's remember to place our focus on the Guthrie family and on finding Nancy and how tragic this is, and not get lost, not let her get lost in all of this stuff. And I think those dates are important, maybe not because of witchery, but I think they ultimately mean something that is a big clue. And I think some creative person may be able to help us understand why. Don't you guys think the dates mean something, even if it's about money?
That was an interesting poll.
They mean something. And, so I keep your eyes on those dates. I think there's a reason law enforcement's focusing on them. They're really important somehow. So we'll figure it out.
Bob, final words tonight.
Good to be back here with all of you. Dan, good to meet you. Thanks for being here. Enjoyed the interaction. Chris and Karen, thanks very much. And shout out to the awesome mods. And good night, everyone. Stay vigilant and keep your wits about you. This thing will be solved. I am confident of it.
Okay. Johnny?
I'm actually supposed to be retired Yet I'm now looking at writing. One of your viewers said, "Write faster, John." I'm writing as fast as I can. I'm writing the fourth book, and then I'm looking at projects with both Gary and Chris, and I've had a couple of other projects that I'm thinking about myself. So I want to thank. It's a delight to meet Dan, to work with this group. Thank you for the mods. Everybody have a happy Easter, and Chris, you're getting out with 29 minutes to spare.
You know what? I must be living right. Must be the eggs. Must be the Easter eggs today. You know,
Eggs are good for you.
you know, they are good for me. Well, two things. One,
Or big flamingos, eggs.
yeah, the first thing is, as always, we are grateful for each and every one of you that show up and support this channel. I've been at it for over 5 years now, and we're really starting to get some momentum, and we would really appreciate you sharing this out. If you could get us up to 300, that'd be great. But only you can do that. And we recognize that. Karen and I recognize that it's not about us. It's about the quality content that we bring to you. And we also hope that you would support all YouTube channels with folks that are just trying to do the right thing. It doesn't necessarily mean, from my perspective, that I'm always going to do the right thing, but I try, and that's because of you. And you got to love John's dog. You gotta.
More requests.
We have to take care of each other. We're all that we have. And all of us on this panel have seen enough evil in the world to know that it exists. And, the small things don't mean anything. It's always about, let's try to lift. The greatest exercise we'll ever do is lift somebody else up. And if we recognize that principle, good things do bad, or good people do bad things sometimes. It doesn't necessarily make them completely evil. But don't forget, there are also evil people out there. So you have to sometimes figure out what bucket the individuals are in. And in this case, the family is suffering. Savannah Guthrie is suffering. The rest of the family is suffering. But at the same time, we're all looking through a window that maybe has a little smear to it, and we're getting a reflection of ourselves. As on this Easter, whosoever hath not sinned, let them cast the first stone. And so we have to somehow take a look at ourselves and say, okay, am I trying to do the best that I can? And the answer is yes, we are. All of us, each one of you in the chat, you're doing the best that you can. And so don't give up on yourself, and just try to be a little kinder to that person next to you. And so with that, as they say in Hawaii, be akamai, pay attention, i.e. keep as Bobby says up there, keep your head on a swivel. You never know what's on the other side. And so continue to take care of yourself, and panel, if you guys would stay again till everything uploads, that would be grateful.
Yep.
Aloha, everybody. Have a good evening. See you on the next one.
Good night.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. We we're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a way.